Chapter 40. Murong just glanced at Murong Bai indifferently. He didn't even know why this Murong Bai was always against him. Murong knew Murong Yu's plan with just a thought. He smiled faintly and said, "The properties of the Yun family are just a drop in the ocean for our Murong family. Since you want them, Murong Yu, you can take them." A cold light flashed through Murong Bai's eyes. He was about to speak, but was interrupted by Murong Yang. Immediately, he just glared at Murong Yu with a fierce look. On this day, Murong family took action and destroyed all the properties of the Yun family in an East city in an instant. In front of the giant Murong family, the Yun family was like an ant. They were directly trampled to death without any power to resist. All the properties were taken over by Murong Yu, and Yun Zhengbua was killed. Then, the Yun family was completely wiped out. In the Blessing Mansion, "Little Yu, I heard that you were assassinated. Is this true?" When Murong Yu just entered the Blessing Mansion, Li Feng rushed over like a gust of wind. He touched Murong Yu's body and said with concern. Murong Yu was touched by Li Feng and had goosebumps all over his body. He hurriedly slapped Li Feng and sent him flying. Then he said with a smile, "Do I look like I'm injured now?" At this time, Li Gua came over and said apologetically, "Little Yu, this is all because of our relationship. Uncle Li is really sorry." "It's okay. They can't touch me. Isn't the Yun family wiped out?" Murong Yu said with a smile, but deep in his eyes, there was a touch of deep emotion. If Murong Yang and the others were good to him because of his aptitude, then Li Feng and his son were sincerely good to him. Was the Yin family really wiped out? Li Gua sighed, and a complicated expression appeared on his face. He didn't know whether he should be happy or rejoice. Previously, the Blessing Gathering Loft had been suppressed by the Yun family, causing Li Gua and his son to suffer greatly. Now that the Yun family had been wiped out, no one dared to do anything to the Blessing Gathering Mansion. Moreover, after this incident, many people knew about the relationship between Murong Yu and Li Feng, as well as the Blessing Gathering Loft. Within the capital, who would dare to make a move? Wasn't he afraid of being killed by the Murong family? "What? You want to hand over the Yun family's assets to us? How can that be?" When he learned of Murong Yu's idea, Li Gua immediately voted against it. Compared to the Blessing Gathering Loft, the Yun family's property, which could not catch the eye of the Murong family, was incomparably huge. And Murong Yu wanted to give this business to him so casually? Li Gua and his son couldn't accept it. Murong Yu had a helpless look on his face. Since they didn't accept it, he could only use another method. He said, "Uncle Li, the Yun family's assets have already been taken over by me. However, you should know that I will be participating in the Immortal Cultivation Assembly soon, and perhaps I will be cultivating in the future. Therefore, it is impossible for me to manage these assets. Therefore, I can only hand them over to you." Li Gua muttered to himself. What Murong Yu said was the truth. Once Murong Yu went to cultivate, he wouldn't have time to manage these worldly affairs. In fact, Murong Yu might not even return. After all, once Murong Yu succeeded in his cultivation, he would immediately ascend and become an immortal. Moreover, the lifespan of a cultivator was very long. How could ordinary people like them compare to it? In reality, Li Gua naturally knew what Murong Yu meant. Nominally, he would hand them over to him to manage. However, what if Murong Yu really didn't return? In the end, these assets still belonged to Li Gua. Obviously, this was Murong Yu's plan. Right now, he could only do this much for Li Gua and his son. After destroying the Yun family, he would hand over a decent asset to Li Gua and have Murong's family take care of it. He believed that with Li Gua and his son's ability, they should be able to rise up very quickly. "Okay, I will help you take care of it. When you come back one day, I'll return all of your properties to you." After pondering for a long time to stop himself from vomiting, Li Gua finally accepted the offer. However, Li Feng was somewhat silent. "Little Yu, the immortal cultivation world is very dangerous. This trip," Li Feng looked at Murong Yu with a complicated expression. "Don't worry, I will become an immortal. When the time comes, I will turn you all into immortals." Murong Yu smiled and patted Li Feng's shoulder. When he went to the immortal cultivation world, his only concern was Li Feng. As for Zhao Jiqing, Murong Yu knew that they could meet in the immortal cultivation world. This was certain, so he wasn't worried about anything. After handing over the Yun family's assets to Li Gua, Murong Yu returned. In the following time, Murong Yu continued to cultivate. While waiting for the Immortal Cultivation Conference to begin, his strength was also increasing day by day. On this day, Murong Yang sent people to find Murong Yu. The Immortal Cultivation Conference was finally about to begin. The Immortal Cultivation World was also called the Cultivation World. It was a place where people cultivated immortal techniques to strengthen themselves and even become immortal. It was a world that was much more vast than the secular world. Where was the cultivation world? It was actually the same as the Huaxiao world. However, this world was simply too vast and boundless. The Huaxiao world was only the tip of the iceberg. Apart from the secular world, the rest of the world could be called the cultivation world. In the cultivation world, there were countless immortal cultivation sects. Among them, the 10 great sects were the most powerful and were called the 10 great powers of the cultivation world. The Immortal Cultivation Conference was held by these 10 great sects. The Purple Cloud Mountain was named after a type of purple leaf tree that grew throughout the mountain range. From afar, it looked like a purple cloud. The Purple Cloud Mountain was the most famous mountain range in the Great Xia dynasty. Every year, it attracted countless people to come here to play. It was a famous tourist attraction. The Immortal Cultivation Conference of the Great Xia dynasty was held in the depths of the Purple Cloud Mountain. Of course, the so-called depths were a place where people, or even ordinary warriors, could not reach. The Immortal Cultivation Conference was held once every 3 years. Every time, it would be held in the 10 great empires of the Huaxiao world. In the Great Xia dynasty, it was held by the Tianyin sect. In the Great Zhou dynasty, it was held by the Limitless Sword sect. This was because the 10 great sects each controlled one of the empires in the Huaxiao world. In the Great Xia dynasty, the Tianyin sect was the leader, while the Limitless Sword sect controlled the Great Zhou dynasty. In the depths of the Purple Cloud Mountain, which was usually a place where people rarely went, many figures appeared one after another in the past few days. At first glance, most of the people who appeared were Xiantian realm experts. Although the Purple Cloud Mountain was a famous scenic spot, its depths were extremely steep and difficult for ordinary people to climb. Only Xiantian realm experts could walk in the mountains without fear of powerful wild beasts. Murong Yu, the Murong family's clan head, and a group of 10 people were walking through the lofty mountain range. Other than Murong Yu and Murong Yang, there was also Murong Hao, the former #1 genius of the Murong clan. Other than that, there were a few other disciples of the Murong clan with good aptitudes. Although only Xiantian realm experts had the qualifications to cultivate, it was only the beginning of the cultivation world. However, as long as they had good aptitudes, they also had the qualifications to enter the Immortal Cultivation sect. After all, everyone came from Xiantian realm. However, it was easier for Xiantian realm experts with good aptitudes to be recruited by the big sects and have a better future. Murong Yang walked to the front of the group, followed by Murong Hao. Not far behind Murong Hao, there were a few other disciples of the Murong clan with good aptitudes. As for Murong Yu, he was naturally the last to enter. It wasn't that Murong Yu didn't want to be unsociable, but these people really didn't have any interactions with him. After all, Murong Yu was previously a famous waste. Other than Li Feng and the others, his friends were limited. It could even be said that he only had one friend, Li Feng. As for Zhao Jiqing, that was already beyond the scope of ordinary friends. However, what made Murong Yu a little puzzled was that the siblings Murong Ling, who kicked him off the cliff, had never appeared. For Murong Ling, in the entire Murong clan, he was the only one who wanted to kill. Although it was because of Murong Ling's kick that Murong Yu was where he was today. However, what if Murong Yu didn't happen to fall on Hichu Luo Shu? Murong Yu would have died long ago. Therefore, he still had a monstrous killing intent towards Murong Ling. However, when he returned, the siblings Murong Ling were still not in the Murong clan. Otherwise, with Murong Yu's character, he would have already gone to find Murong Ling and crippled him. A figure flashed, and a group of people appeared on the other side of the mountain. At first glance, there were about a dozen people. Clan leader Murong, long time no see. A clear voice came from afar. So, it's clan leader Su and clan leader Yin. Murong Yang stopped and looked at the two middle-aged men in the crowd with a smile on his face. The Su clan, the Yin clan, like the Murong clan, they were a big family in the Great Xia dynasty. However, the Su clan and the Yin clan were closer. Although their relationship with the Murong clan was good, they didn't come to the Zixia mountain with the Murong clan to participate in the cultivation assembly. Murong Yu just glanced at these people indifferently, and he found a few familiar faces in the crowd. Yin Dong, Su Qian. These two people were one of the few people who were with Murong Ling at Tianzhu Mountain that day. When Murong Yu saw these two people, a cold, killing intent flashed past the depths of his eyes. It had only been a few months, and they had already broken through to the Xiantian realm. Feeling Murong Yu's killing intent, Yin Dong and Su Qian looked over with disdain. Although Murong Yu defeated Murong Hao, they were all Xiantian realm experts. Which one of them wasn't proud and arrogant? Even if Murong Yu defeated Murong Hao, in their eyes, he was just a piece of trash. Murong Hao was defeated by him? That could only mean that Murong Hao, the former #1 genius, was just an undeserved reputation. They even believed that even if Murong Yu defeated Murong Hao, he was just a piece of trash in the Hodian realm. So what if he had a lot of long qi? In fact, they only knew about Murong Yu when he defeated Murong Hao. They didn't know that Murong Yu was already a Xiantian realm expert. Chapter 41. Murong Yu sneered inwardly. His gaze swept past them and finally landed on someone's face. Murong Yu's eyes immediately emitted traces of divine light. Zhao Jiqing. Zhao Jiqing stood in the crowd, dressed in snow-white robes. She was like a high and mighty fairy from the 9 heavens. She was so beautiful and noble that she couldn't be found anywhere else. However, the flies around her were a little annoying. Third firmament Khanate. When Murong Yu saw Zhao Jiqing for the first time, his eyes shone with a resplendent light. Apart from thinking that Zhao Jiqing was becoming more and more beautiful, her strength also shocked Murong Yu. 16 years old, third firmament Khanate. Even in the Great Xia dynasty, this kind of strength was probably one of the best. Immortal spirit body. Hichu's surprised voice suddenly sounded in Murong Yu's mind. Immortal spirit body? What's that? This was the first time Murong Yu had seen Hichu so surprised, so he couldn't help but ask in surprise. That girl has an immortal spirit body. Like your chaotic physique, it's a rare physique. Although it's not as good as your chaotic celestial body, it's still one of the top physiques, Hichu explained. Murong Yu's eyes shone with a divine light. He hadn't expected Zhao Jiqing to have a rare physique as well. Although it wasn't as good as his chaotic celestial body, there was no physique in this world that could compare. After all, the chaotic celestial body was the supreme physique. It's a pity that her cultivation method is trash. If only she had a better one, her achievements would be limitless, Hichu said with a sigh. In this secular world, he'd not only met Murong Yu's chaotic celestial body, he'd also encountered an equally rare immortal spirit body. Even though he'd followed war god Zhao Yun for so long and had seen so much, he'd only seen a few unique physiques. Looking at Murong Yu, who was not far away, Zhao Jiqing's beautiful eyes were filled with anticipation, and a wisp of extraordinary splendor flashed across her eyes. All this time, Zhao Jiqing's attitude towards Murong Yu, or rather, her feelings towards Murong Yu had never changed because Murong Yu was a trash. However, when she knew that she would have the opportunity to enter the cultivation world and become a cultivator, she even wanted to ask for an elixir from Murong Yu, so that Murong Yu could change his physique and cultivate. 3 months ago, she had heard that Murong Yu had also become a warrior. Moreover, his strength was not bad. However, due to certain reasons, they were unable to meet each other. Now, when she saw Murong Yu and felt that Murong Yu was not weak, Zhao Jiqing was happy. All along, Zhao Jiqing had always been blunt with her words and expressions towards others, cold as ice. like an ice beauty. Even those who surrounded her were all young talents of an East city. Many young talents of the Yin clan and the Su clan had surrounded Zhao Jiqing like flies all the way. They were trying to win Zhao Jiqing's favor. However, Zhao Jiqing only had Murongyu in her heart. When had she ever had any thoughts about these people? She simply did not bother to pay attention to them. But now, when she saw Murongyu, those people saw the change in Zhao Jiqing's expression. Immediately, these people's faces became very ugly. Oh, isn't that the Trash of Murong's clan? Why did he come to Zixia Mountain? Does Trash also want to cultivate nowadays? A young disciple of the Yin clan named Yin Ping looked at Murongyu with a disdainful smile. Trash is trash. Coming here is just asking for humiliation. How dare he dream of cultivating? If it were me, I would have committed suicide long ago, Su Guang said with a sneer. Hearing the sarcastic words of the so-called geniuses of the two clans, Murongyu did not have any thoughts, but Zhao Jiqing's eyes were already filled with disgust. However, she concealed it very well and was not discovered by the idiots of the Su clan and the Yin clan. After Su Guang and Yin Ping finished speaking, they looked at Zhao Jiqing with a complacent expression. However, they did not know that Zhao Jiqing hated them to the extreme. Although he can't cultivate, it's good to have some knowledge. Otherwise, he will live half his life without even knowing what the cultivation world is like. He will be like a country bumpkin. Another young disciple of the Su clan said with a laugh. Seeing the juniors of their clans insulting Murongyu, the Su clan and the Yin clan did not stop them. On the contrary, they smiled. On the other side, Murongyu did not look at these people from beginning to end. It was as if he did not hear those unpleasant words. His eyes were only looking at Zhao Jiqing, full of tenderness. While Murongyu did not care, the people of the Murong clan had strange expressions on their faces. Perhaps other people felt that Murongyu was still trash. Even Murong Hao and the others felt that Murongyu was only SOSO. However, Murong Hao being defeated by him was an ironclad matter. Su Guang, Yin Ping, and the others were not as strong as Murong Hao. If they said that Murongyu was trash, then weren't they even more trash? It's best to teach these bastards a lesson. The few disciples of the Murong clan all had this thought in their hearts. As such, they could only look at each other with strange expressions. They saw Zhao Jiqing looking at Murongyu with a strange light in her eyes, and Murongyu also looked at Zhao Jiqing without blinking. The flies around Zhao Jiqing were not happy. A toad wants to eat swan meat? Why don't you go home and look in a mirror to see what kind of bird you are? A disciple of the Yin clan said disdainfully. Murong Yang's eyes narrowed slightly, revealing a trace of cold light. Seeing that the two clan leaders did not interfere with his own clan, he kept sneering in his heart. Long time no see. How have you been recently? Walking to Zhao Jiqing's side, Murongyu looked at Zhao Jiqing tenderly and said softly, breathing in the faint fragrance of Zhao Jiqing's body. Zhao Jiqing smiled faintly. At this moment, it was like 100 flowers were competing to be beautiful. An extremely beautiful smile bloomed in an instant, causing the world to lose its color. Even the incomparably beautiful purple cloud mountain was overshadowed by Zhao Jiqing's smile. Looking at Zhao Jiqing's extremely beautiful smile, even Murongyu could not help but be stunned. The young disciples of the other clans nearby were all in a daze. Some of them even had their mouths wide open, drooling. They looked like pigs. Even Murong Yang, who was a clan leader, was slightly stunned. It was not that they had never seen a beauty, nor was it that they did not have self-control. But at this moment, Zhao Jiqing's smile was indeed extremely beautiful. Seeing the expressions of the surrounding people, Murongyu snorted coldly in his heart. Su Guang woke up with a start, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. His figure flashed and blocked in front of Zhao Jiqing. He looked at Murongyu with disdain. Who do you think you are? How dare you get close to Fairy Zhao? Don't pollute the nobility of Fairy Zhao with your lowliness. Murongyu frowned. Even a clay figurine would have some anger, Not to mention that Murong Yu was not a clay figurine to begin with. The reason why he did not care before was because he did not care about these people at all. How could a person care so much about a dog? However, in the face of a barking dog that was blocking the way, no one would have a good expression. Scram! Murong Yu only glanced at Su Guang indifferently and coldly shouted. Su Guang jumped in fright, but he reacted very quickly. Immediately, he looked at Murong Yu with murderous intent and said with a murderous aura, "You're courting death." At the same time, Su Guang kicked Murong Yu's lower abdomen. A strong sound of air splitting was heard, and the faint shadow of a flood dragon appeared in the void above Su Guang's head. He actually used all his strength to kick Murong Yu. If it was 3 months ago, Murong Yu would have been kicked to death by his internal organs. One could imagine how vicious Su Guang was. A fierce murderous intent flashed in the depths of Murong Yu's eyes. He took a step back and avoided Su Guang's attack by a hair's breadth. Su Guang did not give up. He took another step forward, and 90 flood dragon shadows appeared in the sky above his head. A huge fist like a mountain fiercely smashed towards Murong Yu's head. The Hotian 9th layer. Even if it was an expert of the Hotian 9th layer, his head would be smashed and he would die. What a vicious person. A cold, murderous intent flashed in Murong Yu's eyes. This time, he did not retreat, but directly punched out. Kacha! As the two huge fists collided, the crisp sound of bones breaking rang out. The bones in Su Guang's right fist, in fact his entire arm, were shattered by Murong Yu's fist, causing it to droop limply to the ground. Murong Yu's body was already extremely tough, and his strength was far superior to Su Guang's. With one blow, the difference between the two was obvious. Murong Yu's fist bombarded Su Guang's chest, and his sternum was shattered. Su Guang issued a shrill scream and spat out a mouthful of blood. He was directly sent flying. "You're courting death." Su Guang was sent flying and fell to the ground in the distance, and no one knew whether he was dead or alive. Su Bo, who was also a disciple of the Su family, growled. He took a step forward and punched towards Murong Yu. Boom! A fiery red flood dragon shadow appeared in the sky above his head, and at the same time, an incomparably huge and terrifying power erupted from his fist. It tore through the air, making a terrible sonic boom, and rapidly bombarded Murong Yu's head. A master of the Hotian 1st layer, he attacked with all his strength, trying to kill Murong Yu. In this regard, the Su family leader did not stop him, but just looked on coldly. After all, even Su Guang, who was injured by Murong Yu, was not an important figure of the Su family. Moreover, although the three worlds seemed to have a good relationship on the surface, they were fighting openly and secretly. They just turned a blind eye to this kind of fight between the younger generation of the family. In fact, this kind of fight between the younger generation was not only a test of the strength of the younger generation. Once they won, the patriarchs would have more face. If they lost, they would naturally lose face. Therefore, the Su family leader did not stop Su Bo from attacking. Chapter 42. Kill this trash. At this time, the other disciples of the Su family ran over to take a look at Su Guang and found that Su Guang was seriously injured. Suddenly, they became furious and looked at Murong Yu with murderous intent and shouted loudly. Su Guang was almost crippled by him. Su Bo, kill him and avenge Su Guang. This trash is too arrogant. He actually dared to injure Su Guang. Su Bo, kill him for me. Let him know that trash is trash. The people of the Su family kept roaring, but they still regarded Murong Yu as trash. In this regard, the people of the Yin family also shouted very fiercely. However, the people from the Murong family had been sneering at them. These people still didn't know Murong Yu. This guy had even killed a Xiantian master, and his methods were extremely cruel. How could a mere Xiantian 1st stage Su Bo be Murong Yu's opponent? Murong Yu, kill these little bastards of the Su family. Suddenly, a disciple of the Murong family roared. It was a teenager called Murong Qing. Hearing Murong Qing's words, the others couldn't help but be stunned. Then, the people of the Su family reacted. Idiot, your Murong family is full of trash. How can a mere trash be Su Bo's opponent? A person of the Su family sneered. Yes, Murong Yu is just a trash. A disciple of the Yin family sneered. Trash? You were almost killed by trash. Your Su family is even worse than trash. Murong Qing sneered. Although he had said a lot, it was all in a short period of time. At this time, Su Bo's attack exploded towards Murong Yu. Get lost. Murong Yu's eyes flashed with a cold light. With a low shout, he turned his fist into a claw and grabbed Su Bo's fist. Then, a terrifying power burst out like a flood. Kacha! The sound of bones breaking could be heard. Murong Yu lightly clenched his fist, and the bones in Su Bo's palm were immediately broken. At the same time, Murong Yu kicked out. Bang! Murong Yu kicked Su Bo's abdomen and sent him flying before he could react. He easily sent Su Bo flying with a kick. Moreover, he didn't even use the power of the dragon. It should be known that Su Bo wasn't a Hotian warrior, but a Xiantian First Sky Master. Seeing this scene, the Su family's patriarch's face turned gloomy. As for the Su family's disciples, they instantly shut their mouths and looked at Murong Yu in disbelief. Yin Dong and Su Qian looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. More than 3 months ago, they had seen with their own eyes that Murong Yu was almost whipped to death by the Hotian 6 Celestial Layer Murong, without any power to fight back. However, after only 3 months, he could easily defeat a Xiantian master and even kill one. This made them extremely shocked. The eyes of the Su family patriarch flickered as he stared at Murong Yu. A cold, murderous intent flashed in the depths of his eyes. The people of the Yin family were also silent, especially their patriarch, who stared at Murong Yu with astonishment. Only the people of Murong's family were beaming with joy. Murong Yu had consecutively defeated Su Bo and Su Bo, which made them extremely happy. After all, they were all of the same generation. Usually, their strength was not as good as Su Bo's, so they had suffered a lot. Looking at the gloomy face of the Su family patriarch, Murong Yang was laughing in his heart. These 3 old foxes usually fought openly and secretly, but there was no clear winner. Now, Murong Yu had taught Su Bo and Su Bo a lesson. Murong Yang was secretly delighted. Well, the cultivation assembly is about to begin. Let's not fight over personal feelings. If we miss this cultivation assembly, we'll have to wait 3 years. Murong Yang suddenly said indifferently. On the surface, he was alleviating the awkward atmosphere. In reality, he was stopping the people of the Su family from continuing to challenge Murong Yu. After all, although Murong Yu was strong, he couldn't withstand the continuous challenges of the Su family. If something unexpected happened and they missed the cultivation assembly, then the gains would not make up for the losses. Well, let's continue. The Su family patriarch coldly snorted and strode forward. Humph! The people of the Su family helped Su Guang and Su Bo up. They glared at Murong Yu fiercely and murderously. In the end, they didn't make a move and followed the Su family. Murong Yu and Zhao Jiqing naturally fell behind. Big brother Murong, I'm so happy to see that you can also cultivate. At Murong Yu's side, Zhao Jiqing was no longer the little beauty who was as cold as ice for 10,000 years. Instead, she had become a little sister next door. She bloomed with the most brilliant smile that made flowers lose their color as she faced Murong Yu. It was only in front of Murong Yu that she would reveal her true self. Murong Yu looked at Zhao Jiqing and smiled. Isn't that right? Seeing that you're about to become an immortal cultivator, of course, I also want to become an immortal cultivator. Otherwise, I won't be able to be with you in the future. Zhao Jiqing only faintly smiled. I know that Big Brother Murong isn't a waste. I've always believed it. Even if you still can't cultivate after I enter a cultivation sect, I'll definitely ask for an immortal pill to change your physique. I won't leave you. Ordinary people only had 100 years of life, but immortal cultivators had extremely long lives. After cultivating to a certain realm, one could live forever and have the same lifespan as the heavens and earth. As an immortal cultivator, It was normal for them to casually go into seclusion for tens or hundreds of years. In this way, a single seclusion was the lifetime of an ordinary person. If Moron Yu couldn't become an immortal cultivator and was still an ordinary person, even if Zhao Jiqing didn't change her mind, they still wouldn't be able to continue being together. Moron Yu was startled. Then, endless gratitude welled up in his heart. He grabbed Zhao Jiqing's soft and boneless little hand and said with an affectionate expression, "Jiqing, you're so affectionate to me. How can I repay you?" Zhao Jiqing's face suddenly turned crimson, and her heart beat wildly. "Big brother Moron, I don't need you to repay me. You know how I feel." At the same time, Zhao Jiqing broke free from Moron Yu's hand and quickly ran forward as if she was escaping. Looking at Zhao Jiqing's graceful back, Moron Yu's face also revealed a smile. "Jiqing, don't worry. I definitely won't let you down in this life." In the depths of Mount Zixia, there was a ravine with beautiful scenery. The ravine was extremely large, about a few hundred kilometers in size. At the end of the ravine, there was an incomparably huge plain. And this was the location where the Immortal Cultivation Assembly was held. When Moron Yu and the others arrived here, they found that the entire ravine was filled with heads. At a glance, the number of heads was like an ocean. There were too many to count. The Immortal Cultivation Assembly was held once every 3 years. Every Immortal Cultivation Assembly was held at a fixed location within the 10 great empires of Huaxia. It was just like how the Great Xia Dynasty held it at Mount Zixia. Apart from the Great Xia Dynasty, those clans that were dependent on the Great Xia Dynasty or the countries surrounding the Great Xia Dynasty, as long as they had a certain amount of power, would bring their young elites to participate in the Immortal Cultivation Assembly. In the Huaxia world, apart from the 10 great empires, there were thousands of countries and various aristocratic families. Therefore, every Immortal Cultivation Assembly had an extremely large number of participants. In the innermost part of the plain, Murong's family was standing in a large open space. Apart from them, the Yin clan, the Su clan, and the other clans were the same. These clans were extremely powerful. In the secular world, they were much more superior than the other aristocratic families. Apart from them, the other families could only squeeze together in one place. Whoosh! Suddenly, the crowd was in an uproar. Each and every one of them looked behind them with a shocked expression. The crowd retreated like the tide. Following that, 2 figures slowly walked in. Everyone's eyes instantly gathered on the 2 people, a man and a woman. The man was delicate and pretty while the woman was exceedingly beautiful. Rather than saying that everyone's eyes were gathered on them, it would be better to say that everyone's eyes were gathered on the stunning beauty. Fairy. What a beautiful fairy. Are these the cultivators of the immortal realm? Only they would have such a fresh and refined beauty. Which sect is this fairy from? I must join that sect. Idiot, this fairy is only at the Xiantian realm. She's definitely not one of those cultivators. Cultivators haven't appeared yet. That's even better. I'll have a chance. Everyone was eager to try. But who is that man beside the fairy? He looks like a gigolo. How annoying. He's clearly a gigolo. The crowd was unceasingly discussing the man and the woman. This man and woman were precisely Moron Yu and Zhao Jiqing. Looking at Zhao Jiqing chatting and laughing with Moron Yu, Yin Ping and the others' faces were filled with indignation. They couldn't understand why Zhao Jiqing was so close to this trash, Moron Yu. She wanted to find trouble with Moron Yu, right? But when they thought about how Moron Yu was no longer the same as before, no one dared to seek death. However, just because they didn't dare to find trouble with Moron Yu didn't mean that others couldn't. A young man of about 20 years old revealed a smile that he thought was very handsome. He walked towards Moron Yu and stood in front of them. "Hello, fairy. I'm a disciple of the Wang family of the Great Xia Dynasty. My name is Wang Feisong. May I have the honor of meeting you?" Wang Feisong smiled at Zhao Jiqing. His eyes flashed with a lewd look, but he didn't even bother to look at Moron Yu. Scram! Moron Yu took a step forward. His eyes flashed with a cold light as he growled. Wang Feisong was stunned. Then, A fierce, murderous look flashed across his eyes. "Kid, who are you? Go away." As he spoke, Wang Feisong slapped Murong Yu's face. Zhao Jiqing's face turned cold. Just as she was about to explode, Murong Yu had already slapped him. Slap! Murong Yu's slap landed heavily on Wang Feisong's face. A huge force exploded and sent Wang Feisong flying. After a loud bang, Wang Feisong landed heavily on the ground in the distance. He was dizzy from the fall. However, he quickly got up and glared at Murong Yu with a face full of resentment. At the same time, he quickly rushed over with a murderous look. Chapter 43. Brat, how dare you hit me? Do you want to die? Wang Feisong had already turned into a phantom and rushed towards Murong Yu. During this process, Wang Feisong increased his strength, and a black kuei long shadow bloomed above his head. He reached out his hand and turned it into a claw to grab Murong Yu's head, intending to crush it. The power of kuei long. A master of the first heaven of the Khanate realm was considered powerful in the secular world. However, it was nothing in front of Murong Yu. Get lost, as far away as you can. Murong Yu took a step forward and snorted. He kicked Wang Feisong's abdomen and sent him flying. Seeing this, Murong Hao's eyes flashed coldly. Murong Yu's strength has improved again. When he fought Murong Yu in the arena, Murong Yu was definitely not as strong as he was now. Bang! Wang Feisong fell to the ground and stopped breathing. No one knew if he was dead or alive. In response, Murong Yu just snorted coldly. Then, he pulled Zhao Jiqing's hand and walked towards the depths of the plain. Brat, you hurt someone from the Wang family, and you're leaving just like that? A sinister voice sounded. At the same time, a terrifying wind tore through the air and grabbed Murong Yu's head at an extremely fast speed. He wanted to kill Murong Yu. Murong Yu narrowed his eyes slightly. An expert. His expression did not change. He let go of Zhao Jiqing and threw a punch behind him. Boom! After an earth-shattering explosion, dust flew everywhere. A terrifying shockwave swept out in all directions with them as the center. Even some of the gravel under his feet were blasted into smithereens. Wang Feidong was surprised. He did not expect Murong Yu to be able to block his attack so easily. However, he was only surprised for a moment. Then he took a step forward. The big hand turned into a claw, grabbing the air and fiercely slapping toward Murong Yu's head. Tiger Roar Emperor Fist. Murong Yu roared in his heart and punched out. Suddenly, tiger roars sounded and a fierce wind blew. Rumble. With just one strike, the two of them seemed to have suffered a heavy blow. Both of them were sent flying by the shockwave. Brat, your strength is not bad, but I've only used less than 30% of my strength. Prepare to die. Wang Feidong sneered and took a step forward. At the same time, 5 extremely condensed azure kuei dragons appeared above him. Third sky of the Xiantian realm. Dying. After using heavenly dragon strength, Wang Feidong grinned maliciously. He stomped on the ground, shattering it. Borrowing the force of the stomp, he soared into the air and pounced on Murong Yu like an eagle. He wanted to kill Murong Yu. Third sky of the Xiantian realm. The strength of 5 dragons. To be able to possess such a dragon's strength at such a level, one could only be considered an ordinary cultivator. However, for Wang Feidong to have such strength at such a young age, he could be considered a genius. The power of 5 dragons. This person is actually at the 3rd heaven of the nascent realm. His opponent is in danger. That guy doesn't look like a nascent realm master. How can he be this person's opponent? I'm afraid he can't even withstand a single blow. There was a lot of discussion in the crowd. None of them were optimistic about Murong Yu. Even Zhao Jiqing's brows furrowed slightly. After all, Murong Yu's rise was in the past 3 months. Even if he was powerful, how could he fight against a 3rd heaven of the nascent realm master in just 3 months? Feeling Zhao Jiqing's worry, Murong Yu just smiled at her. Then, he stepped on a flying cloud 4 steps and suddenly soared into the air. He turned into a dragon and attacked Wang Yifei like a phantom. What? He can fly? Seeing Murong Yu stepping in the void, It was as if he was flying in the air. The crowd was immediately shocked. Impossible, even a ninth heaven of the nascent realm can't fly. How'd he do it? Even the low-level cultivators in the cultivation world couldn't fly directly in the air. When they were in the low-level realm, they could only fly with the help of flying swords. To be able to fly in the air with one's physical body, one must be an expert in the cultivation world. Elephant drawing fist. Moronyu roared in his heart and quickly punched out. Boom! After a loud explosion, 5 black Kuei dragons appeared above Murongyu's head, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. With Murongyu's mountain-like fist, a huge torrent-like force burst out from his fist. It tore the air and bombarded Wang Feidong. Boom! After an earth-shattering explosion, it was as if the void had been shattered by them, and even the sky seemed to be shaking. The earth trembled, and the nearby warriors were directly pushed back by the terrifying shock wave. Murongyu and Wang Yifei both snorted and were repelled. How is it possible? The first heaven of a nascent realm and the power of 5 Kuei dragons? After seeing Murongyu's realm and the power of dragons, not only Wang Feidong was shocked, but also many nearby experts were shocked. Who is this person? He has such incredible strength. In the crowd, countless people were shocked. It should be known that the first heaven of the nascent realm had the power of 1 Kuei dragon at most. However, Murongyu's power of dragons was 5 times stronger than that of an ordinary person at the first heaven of the nascent realm. 5 times! What if he reached the 3rd heaven of the nascent realm? How much power of dragons would he have? In the distance, Muronghao clenched his fists when he saw this scene, but his eyes were full of horror. He remembered that not long ago, Murongyu only had the power of 200 Kuei dragons and hadn't even reached the nascent realm. In just a few days, Murongyu had the power of 5 Kuei dragons and had far surpassed him, the former first genius of the family. I'm the first genius. I was in the past, now, and in the future. Murongyu, soon, I will trample you under my feet again. Muronghao roared in his heart, and his face was somewhat ferocious. Murongyu stepped on the flying cloud 4 steps and swept through the void, rushing directly to Wang Feidong like lightning. Wang Feidong was shocked, but his face was ugly. The 3rd heaven of the nascent realm is just SOSO. Murongyu sneered and grabbed at the void, crushing countless air and directly grabbing at Wang Yifei. Ha! SOSO. Boy, today I will let you see the real strength of the 3rd heaven of the nascent realm. Wang Feidong laughed and stepped on the ground, leaping into the air and attacking Murongyu. Ripping Lung Dragon Claw kick. Murongyu roared in his heart and used the Dragon Elephant Prajna technique to attack. In an instant, the power was overwhelming and the sky fell and the earth cracked. The terrible power erupted and directly killed the sun and moon. Because of the flying cloud 4 steps, Murongyu could stay in the void for a short period of time. However, although Wang Yifei's realm was high, he did not have a similar cultivation technique. Therefore, just because of this, he had already fallen behind Murongyu. In addition, although the 2 of them were at the same realm, Murongyu's body was the chaotic celestial body, and his physique was supreme. Just the strength of his body alone was enough to make Wang Feidong suffer. Kacha! Murongyu's punch shattered countless of Wang Feidong's sternum and directly pushed him back. Then, Murongyu stepped on the air and quickly swept over. With a step, it was as if he had stepped on the void and ruthlessly stomped on Wang Feidong's head. Wang Feidong was furious and fiercely punched out, bombarding Murongyu's foot. He wanted to send Murongyu flying. 10,000 Jin, strength, elephant step. Murongyu roared, and the strength of 5 dragons condensed on his foot. His foot stepped on Wang Feidong's fist. Kacha! Wang Feidong's fist was directly crushed by the foot. With a loud bang, Murongyu, who was standing on Wang Feidong, fell to the ground. The huge force behind the fall had smashed Wang Feidong into the ground, creating a huge human-shaped crater. Bang! When the dust settled, Murongyu stood straight in the same place, 1 foot on Wang Feidong's head, looking around coldly. Idiot! Next time you want to stand up for others, wipe your dog eyes first. You can't afford to offend anyone. Murong Yu sneered, withdrew his foot, and was about to leave. Bastard, I want you dead. Just after Murong Yu left, Wang Feidong rushed up from the ground and roared angrily. He took his sword and viciously slashed at Murong Yu's head, wanting to behead him. They were too close. The distance between them was less than 3 meters. Coupled with Wang Feidong's intention to sneak attack, Murong Yu would definitely die if there were no accidents. Seeing this scene, the crowd immediately let out a cry of surprise. You're courting death. In the distance, Murong Yang Yuan had been smiling as he watched Murong Yu show off his invincible strength and beat Wang Feidong into a pig's head. However, at this moment, he saw Wang Feidong shamelessly trying to sneak attack. He roared, his body flashed, and was about to rush over. He didn't want anything to happen to Murong Yu. Brother Murong, be careful. Zhao Jiqing was not far in front, but she was almost stunned and could only exclaim. Puff! Blood splattered, and Murong Yu and Wang Feidong's movements seemed to have stopped. However, the blood didn't flow from Murong Yu's body, and Murong Yu's head wasn't cut off. The long sword was less than half a meter away from Murong Yu's head, but the black long spear in Murong Yu's hand had already pierced Wang Yifei's heart. Bang! The long spear shook violently, and a powerful force burst out. Suddenly, Wang Feidong's body was directly shattered into thousands of pieces, falling in all directions. Wang Feidong was killed. Seeing this scene, the people in the crowd were stunned. Bastard, you're courting death. At this moment, an angry roar came from the crowd. Then, a terrifying aura burst out and locked onto Murong Yu. A figure turned into a phantom and pounced on Murong Yu, an absolute expert. At this moment, Murong Yu's face suddenly changed. An extremely dangerous aura rushed in from all directions like a torrent. Chapter 44. Before the person arrived, Murong Yu sensed the aura of death. It was impossible to resist. This person must be a master in the primordial realm. In fact, Murong Yu even felt like he was nothing more than an ant from this aura. This person was definitely 10 times stronger than him. He was at least at the 7th level of the primordial realm. At the 7th level of the primordial realm, he had the strength of at least 50 Kuei dragons. Murong Yu only had 5 dragons of strength at most. If he were to go up against someone with 50 dragons of strength, he would be instantly killed. However, Murong Yu's expression only changed slightly, but he did not panic. Want to kill him? Not to mention a master at the 7th level of the primordial realm. Even an ordinary person in the cultivation world could not kill him. Murong Yu held the phoenix spear upside down and looked coldly at the person who rushed over. This was a middle-aged man, but at this moment, his body was full of murderous intent. He rushed toward Murong Yu with an angry face. It seemed that he should be from the Wang family. Boy, go to hell. The middle-aged man growled ferociously. His palm seemed to break the sky and hit Murong Yu fiercely. Isn't this person an elder of the Wang family? It is said that he is a supermaster at the 8th level of the primordial realm. This time, Murong Yu is doomed. Seeing this scene, many people in the crowd had the same idea. After all, although Murong Yu was strong, he only had the strength of 5 dragons. How could he be an expert at the 8th level of the primordial realm? In the secular world, the 8th level of the primordial realm was already a top master. Facing the terrifying aura of the opponent, Murong Yu grabbed the phoenix spear and was about to stab with it. Swish! At this moment, a figure suddenly rushed over from behind Murong Yu and blocked in front of Murong Yu. Bang! The person just punched out, and then there was a loud noise. In the next moment, the crowd saw the Wang family elder, who had been rushing over aggressively, was sent flying like a broken rag doll. The person in front of Murong Yu did not move. He was much stronger than the Wang family elder. Clan head. Murong Yu's heart relaxed as he expressed his gratitude. It turned out that the person in front of Murong Yu was Murong Yang. Murong Yang's appearance not only blocked the attack of the Wang family elder, but also saved Murong Yu's life, at least on the surface. Even if Murong Yang did not make a move, Murong Yu would not be injured. But at that time, he would expose the existence of the Hichu Luo Shu. Once the primordial realm of the primordial heavens, the primordial realm of the primordial Luotian realm. After all, the Hichu Luo Shu was the #1 magical book in the world. Not to mention the people in the cultivation world. Even those legendary immortals would not be able to resist coming over to snatch it. The Wang family elder was sent flying by Murong Yang's punch, and many of his bones were broken as he fell to the ground in the distance. But for an expert of the Xiantian realm of the 8th firmament, this kind of injury was only a superficial wound. The Wang family elder rushed over angrily again and looked at Murong Yang with a murderous expression. "Who are you? Why are you meddling in other people's business?" The Wang family elder was angry and sullen, but he knew that he was not a match for the person in front of him. This person was at least at the 9th firmament of the Xiantian realm. Otherwise, he would not have been able to send him flying with one punch. Murong Yang looked at the Wang family elder and snorted. "Your Wang family is so impressive. You actually dare to meddle in the fight between the younger generation. You really are a disgrace to the Wang family." The Wang family elder was furious. He looked at Murong Yang with fire in his eyes and wanted to slap this person to death. He killed Wang Feidong. He is a genius of our Wang family. A genius of the Wang family? He is just a despicable and shameless person who sneak attacked from behind. This kind of person will be a disaster if he is left alive. Murong Yang sneered, and a murderous intent flashed in his eyes. Just now, even if Murong Yu did not kill Wang Feidong, he had the urge to kill Wang Feidong. And if it were not for the Wang family, he could have killed the Wang family elder with one punch. The Wang family elder's face was red, and he looked at Murong Yang with fire in his eyes. "He will die today." Murong Yang's expression changed, and a terrifying murderous intent exploded from his body. He looked at the Wang family elder coldly. "Are you going to start a war with the Murong family? Do you believe that I will kill everyone in your Wang family today?" Murderous intent surged, and the murderous intent was endless. Feeling Murong Yang's undisguised and naked murderous intent, the Wang family elder's heart trembled. At this moment, he finally knew Murong Yang's identity. Thinking that the other party was the head of the Murong family, with his means and strength. If he continued to pursue this matter, the Wang family would be mercilessly killed by this person today. On the surface, Murong Yang looked like an ordinary head of the family. But in reality, this person was a vicious and merciless person. Back then, before he became the head of the Murong family, he was already famous for his decisiveness and ruthlessness. Countless people or families who offended him were directly killed by him. Today, I will give face to the head of the Murong family and let this matter go. Goodbye. Although the Wang family elder was unhappy, he still gave in the end. Murong Yang only snorted coldly. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. At this moment, a powerful and terrifying aura flew over from the distant sky. Everyone felt it and looked over, only to see streaks of light in the distant sky. The immortals are here. Seeing the streaks of light in the sky like shooting stars, the crowd immediately became restless. Whoosh! A group of people instantly appeared on a high platform in the deepest part of the plain. They're from the Sky Expanse sect. Murong Yang said to Murong Yu with a smile when he saw the dozen or so cultivators. Murong Yu nodded slightly and glanced at the dozen or so people from the Sky Expanse sect. However, when he saw a person, his pupils couldn't help but constrict. The person on the high platform seemed to have felt Murong Yu's gaze and couldn't help but look over. When he saw Murong Yu, a look of extreme resentment appeared in his eyes. Resentment and murderous intent. He didn't hide his cold, murderous intent at all and looked extremely resentful. When Murong Yu met this person's gaze, he couldn't help but frown slightly. Why is he here with the people from the cultivation world? Murong Yu narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at the other party indifferently, ignoring his cold, murderous intent. This person was Murong Dan, the father of Murong Hao and Murong Ji. After Murong Yu slapped Murong Ji to death, Murong Dan disappeared from Murong's house. However, Murong Yu didn't know why Murong Dan would appear with the people from the Sky Expanse sect. Could it be that he was already a disciple of the Sky Expanse sect? If that was the case, it would be troublesome. Murong Yu muttered to himself. Looking at the situation, Murong Dan seemed to have a good relationship with these people. If these people wanted to attack him, Murong Yu frowned deeply because he saw Murong Dan whisper a few words to the cultivators from the Sky Expanse sect beside him. Then, those people focused their attention on Murong Yu. If these people wanted to cause trouble for Murong Yu, then Murong Yu wouldn't be able to resist at all. Even Murong Yang wouldn't be able to stop them. After all, in the cultivation world, even the weakest foundation establishment disciple could easily kill a Xiantian stage 9 martial artist. A Xiantian stage 9 martial artist wouldn't be able to resist at all. On the other hand, after seeing Murong Dan, Murong Hao's face revealed a trace of joy. Then, he shot a venomous glare at Murong Yu. Murong Hao's mother, Wei Shuiyin, is an outer court elder of the Sky Expanse sect. This time, all of us from the Murong family may enter the Sky Expanse sect, Murong Yang whispered to Murong Yu. Murong Yu's face instantly revealed a shocked expression. Murong Yang didn't know what Murong Yu was thinking. He only thought that Murong Yu was stunned by Wei Shuiyin's identity, so he just smiled and turned to look at the high platform in the distance. Boy, you definitely can't join the Sky Expanse sect. Otherwise, you'll definitely die. At this time, Hichu's voice sounded in Murong Yu's ears. Murong Yu nodded. This was the reason why he was shocked just now. Murong Hao's mother, Wei Shuiyin, was actually an outer court elder of the Sky Expanse sect. This explained why Murong Dan was with the cultivators of the Sky Expanse sect. With the power of an outer court elder, it wouldn't be a problem to get all of the Murong family into the Sky Expanse sect. However, Murong Yu killed one of Wei Shuiyin's sons. No matter if it was Murong Hao, Murong Dan, or Wei Shuiyin, they definitely wouldn't let Murong Yu go. In Murong family, perhaps they wouldn't dare to do anything. However, once in the Sky Expanse sect, Murong Yu definitely wouldn't live to see the next day. It was too easy for an outer court elder to kill a disciple who had just joined the sect. At this time, streams of light constantly flashed through the void. Cultivators emitting powerful auras flew over on their swords, Sky Expanse sect, Limitless Sword sect, Purple Flame sect, Zushinzong. The 10 great sects and thousands of small sects appeared one after another. It didn't take long for the platform to be filled with cultivators. However, other than the 10 great sects, the rest of the sects didn't send many people. Some sects even sent only one person. After the 10 great sects arrived, the cultivation assembly officially began. At this time, a cultivator from the Sky Expanse sect stepped forward and coldly snorted. According to the old rules, the disciples of the great sects will come forward first. In fact, when he spoke, Murong Yu could feel his gaze pausing on him for a split second. It was because of this that Murong Yu was even more convinced that he couldn't enter the Sky Expanse sect. The Sky Expanse sect was the power behind the Great Xia dynasty. In the cultivation assembly of the Purple Cloud Mountain, the Sky Expanse sect had the first choice. Just as the cultivator from the Sky Expanse sect finished speaking, there were already disciples who quickly walked into the no man's land. Go, as long as your aptitude passes their selection, you can become cultivators. Murong Yang said to Murong Yu and the others. Murong Yu and the others nodded slightly and walked forward. Chapter 45. The open space was not very big and could only accommodate about 1,000 people. By the time Murong Yu arrived at the empty space, it was almost completely occupied. There were more than 1,000 people, and all of them were geniuses. At this moment, most of the people present looked excited. Even Zhao Jiqing had a look of joy on her face. However, Murong Yu's eyes revealed a hint of worry. Boom! All of a sudden, an unparalleled pressure descended from the sky. At this moment, Murong suddenly felt as if he had been stripped naked and stood in front of everyone. All of his secrets had been seen clearly. Divine consciousness. Murong knew that these immortal cultivators were using their divine consciousness to observe him. Murong did not make a sound and stood in place with a calm expression. Sure enough, after a moment, the huge pressure disappeared. The divine consciousness also disappeared without a trace. You. After the divine consciousness disappeared, a voice sounded in Murong's ears. Everyone who was called, come forward. I was indeed chosen. A cold light flashed in Murong's eyes, and his expression was indifferent. As for the others, they looked excited. Murong, you're dead meat. Murong Dan looked at Murong and smiled coldly, then walked forward quickly. The people who were called were already disciples of the Tianyin sect. In the eyes of immortal cultivators, these people in the Khanate realm could not be hidden from their eyes and ears, whether it was their cultivation level or their age. Therefore, with a sweep of their divine consciousness, they could roughly know a person's aptitude. The younger the age, the higher the cultivation level, the better the aptitude. As for people like Murong, who had the chaotic celestial body constitution, and Zhao Jiqing, who had the immortal spirit body, these people could not detect it. There were about 30 people who were named. These people were all geniuses among geniuses. Not long after, they all walked up. Only Murong remained standing in the crowd, motionless. Brother Murong, let's go up too. Zhao Jiqing pulled Murong's hand and said. Shaking his head, Murong said indifferently, you go up first. The Sky Expanse sect isn't a sect that I want to join. I won't join the Heaven Expanse sect. But what you're doing will anger them. Zhao Jiqing's eyes revealed a trace of worry as she said worriedly. Don't worry, they won't dare to do anything to me. You go up first, don't miss this opportunity. Murong smiled. Zhao Jiqing nodded. Although she was a little worried, she still walked up, because she didn't want to lose this opportunity and because she believed in Murong. Immortal body. The moment Murong stepped out, a female cultivator on the high platform suddenly exclaimed with a trace of divine light in her eyes. What's the matter with you? Why aren't you coming up? The young man who was called out earlier looked at Murong with a sharp gaze. A cold, killing intent flashed in his eyes. Murong sneered in his heart. He looked at the other party coldly and said, I'm sorry, I don't want to join the Sky Expanse sect. I'm sorry, I don't want to join the Sky Expanse sect. When Murong's words left his mouth, the entire ravine, which had been bustling with noise and excitement, instantly fell silent. In the next moment, everyone looked at Murong in disbelief. Is this kid crazy? The Sky Expanse sect is one of the 10 great sects in the cultivation world. No one can enter even if they break their heads. He actually said that he doesn't want to join the Sky Expanse sect. In an instant, the same thought appeared in the minds of all the cultivators present. Among everyone present, only the person involved, Murong, remained silent. Murong, what are you doing? Murong was startled at first, then he growled in a low voice. In addition, Zhao Jiqing also looked at Murong in surprise. Murong looked at Murong and shook his head with a smile. He then said, I don't want to join the Sky Expanse sect. Kid, are you making fun of our Sky Expanse sect? The Sky Expanse sect disciple looked at Murong with a murderous expression. Endless pressure was emitted from his body, crazily pressing down on Murong like raging waves. The Sky Expanse sect is one of the 10 great sects in the cultivation world. I'm just a small cultivator. How would I dare to make fun of you? I've already said twice that I don't want to join the Sky Expanse sect. It's that simple. Murong sneered in his heart and said indifferently. Anyway, if he joined the Sky Expanse sect, he would definitely die. Moreover, he had already offended these Sky Expanse sect disciples, so he was not afraid of offending them again. Oof. The Sky Expanse sect disciple snorted. At the same time, an invisible pressure directly attacked Murong. Murong seemed to have suffered a heavy blow. He groaned and took a few steps back. At this time, the cultivators nearby noticed that blood was flowing out from the corner of his mouth. He was actually injured. Murong had easily killed Wang Feidong, so his strength was still considered strong. However, in front of this immortal cultivator, he could not withstand a single blow. With just a snort, he was injured. This kid is vicious. He almost shattered your meridians. Pichu's voice was cold and filled with murderous intent. On the surface, it was just a snort. However, how could Moronyu block a cultivator's attack? The snort contained an extremely terrifying sound wave attack. If it were not for Muronyu's body being different from ordinary people, all his meridians would have been shattered, and he would have become a cripple. Moronyu narrowed his eyes. A cold, murderous intent flashed through his eyes as he looked at the young man. He sneered and said, "What? You want to kill me because I don't want to join your Sky Expanse sect? Is the Sky Expanse sect one of the 10 great sects actually this kind of trash? If the Sky Expanse sect is filled with people like you, then being one of the 10 great sects is simply bullsh asterisk T. You don't deserve it. Even if you invite me, I won't join this kind of sect." Muronyu's face was pale and ferocious. He looked at the young man on the high platform with a face full of hatred. At the same time, as he spoke, blood kept flowing out from the corner of his mouth. "You're courting death." Hearing Muronyu's words, the young man shouted. His aura instantly exploded, and he was about to kill Moronyu. "Everyone, look, these are the 10 great sects. Do you still want to join this kind of sect? Even if you become a disciple of the Sky Expanse sect, I'm afraid you'll still be oppressed by these people." Moronyu spat out a mouthful of blood and retreated a dozen steps. His face became even paler, and he staggered as if he was seriously injured. "Brother Morong," Zhao Jiqing exclaimed when she saw Muronyu's appearance. She immediately flew down from the high platform and quickly walked to Muronyu's side. She supported Moronyu with a concerned look on her face. "You're so rude and unreasonable. Brother Morong just doesn't want to join your Sky Expanse sect. Even if you seriously injure him, I won't join the Sky Expanse sect," Zhao Jiqing said angrily as she turned to glare at the young man. At the same time, the others looked at each other. Muronyu's words had indeed shaken them. Zhao was so angry that he was about to vomit blood. Zhao was a young man from the Sky Expanse sect. The first time, he had used sound waves to attack Moronyu in an attempt to cripple him. However, he had failed to cripple Moronyu. The second time, his aura had become stronger. However, in all honesty, he really did not attack Moronyu. All of this was because Moronyu had framed him. "This little bastard is too cunning. This time I must kill him. Otherwise, I won't be able to answer to Elder Wei." Zhao's eyes were filled with murderous intent. "Kid, the Sky Expanse sect is open and above board. We're one of the 10 great sects. Since you don't want to join the Sky Expanse sect, we won't force you. Don't slander us. Otherwise, the Sky Expanse sect will definitely pursue this matter to the end," Zhao said coldly. "You're just fishing for fame. Even if you invite me, I won't join this kind of sect." Moronyu sneered. However, when he looked at Zhao Jiqing, he felt a headache coming on. "Jiqing, why are you so stupid?" Moronyu looked at Zhao Jiqing helplessly. Zhao Jiqing shook her head and smiled. "Since Brother Morong doesn't want to join the Sky Expanse sect, there's no point for me to stay there. Moreover, the Sky Expanse sect is only one of the 10 great sects. We can join other sections. Could it be that this little bastard has already noticed?" On the high platform, Murong Dan and his son's faces were gloomy as they whispered to each other. So what if he doesn't join the Sky Expanse sect? He won't live past today." Murong Dan sneered with a ferocious expression. "Father, you mean?" Murong Hao hurriedly asked. Murong Dan did not speak. He only nodded with a cold smile. Sure enough, Zhao didn't bother with Murong Yu and continued to recruit people. Of course, Murong Yu's words only made these people waver. After all, the Sky Expanse sect was one of the 10 great sects. These people were very excited to become their disciples. After the Sky Expanse sect selected their disciples, they went to the other 9 sections. However, it was unknown whether it was because of the Sky Expanse sect, but after a few sects selected their disciples, no one chose Murong Yu. Zhao Jiqing also followed Murong Yu and did not join any sections. Immortal spiritual body, are you willing to join the hidden fairy valley? Suddenly, a beautiful middle-aged female cultivator appeared beside Murong and looked at Zhao Jiqing. Immortal spiritual body. Murong body violently trembled as he looked at the female cultivator in astonishment. His eyes were filled with astonishment. Zhao Jiqing, on the other hand, was confused. The reason why he knew Zhao Jiqing had the immortal spiritual body was because of Hichu. However, Murong did not expect that there would be someone who could see Zhao Jiqing's physique. Huang Furanxue was also surprised when she saw Murong surprised expression. Murong reaction showed that he knew about the immortal spiritual body. However, Zhao Jiqing did not know about it. Chapter 46. Brat, this woman actually knows about the immortal spirit body. Her sect must have related techniques. Letting Zhao Jiqing go to the hidden fairy valley should be a good choice. Before Murong could say anything, Hichu's voice sounded in his ears. Murong secretly nodded. Originally, Hichu also had a technique related to the immortal spirit body. However, if that was the case, Zhao Jiqing wouldn't be able to enter a large sect to cultivate. Murong had the river diagram, so he had everything he needed. He didn't lack anything. However, Zhao Jiqing didn't, so she had to enter a large sect to cultivate. With her aptitude, she would definitely be heavily nurtured by a cultivation sect. May I ask what senior's name is? Murong suppressed his thoughts and smiled at Huang Furanxue. Huang Furanxue smiled and said, "My name is Murong Ranxue, an elder of the Hidden Fairy Valley. Our sect has an immortal technique that is suitable for the immortal spirit body. If your friend can join the Hidden Fairy Valley, then I will do my best to nurture her. In the future, it is very possible for her to become a flying immortal." Zhao Jiqing blankly looked at Murong then at Huang Furanxue. With a face full of confusion, she asked, "Celestial spiritual body? What's that? What does it have to do with me?" Huang Furanxue smiled at Zhao Jiqing and then told her about the immortal spirit body to Zhao Jiqing. After hearing Huang Furanxue's explanation, Zhao Jiqing was a bit moved, but more than that, she was hesitant. "Big brother Murong, will you also go to the Hidden Fairy Valley?" Zhao Jiqing looked at Murong and nervously asked. Murong shook his head. He couldn't join the Hidden Fairy Valley, but Zhao Jiqing must join the Hidden Fairy Valley. Because of his physique, but more importantly, because of Hichu Luo Shu. The #1 mysterious book in the world will be revealed one day. At that time, it will cause chaos in the cultivation world, and even Murong will be hunted down. If Murong and Zhao Jiqing were together, then, with their relationship, if other people couldn't deal with Murong, then Zhao Jiqing's safety would be in danger. Therefore, Murong wouldn't join the same sect as Zhao Jiqing. Jiqing, joining the Hidden Fairy Valley and becoming Elder Huang Furanxue's disciple, is master. However, the Hidden Fairy Valley isn't suitable for me, Murong said with a smile. But Zhao Jiqing still wanted to say something, but she was interrupted by Murong. Then, after Murong made all kinds of promises, Zhao Jiqing finally decided to accept Huang Furanxue as her master. Huang Furanxue was obviously very excited to accept Zhao Jiqing, who had the celestial spiritual body, as her disciple. She didn't even care about the following disciple recruitment, and was about to leave with Zhao Jiqing and return to the sect. Murong, those people from the Sky Expanse sect might harm you. You have to be careful, Huang Furanxue said to Murong before leaving. Murong nodded, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Whoosh! Huang Furanxue brought Zhao Jiqing and disappeared in a flash. Kid, although the Hichu Luoshu has all kinds of resources, and you don't have to worry about these resources. However, there is a limit to your strength. If you don't reach a certain level, you won't be able to use the various resources in the Hichu Luoshu. Therefore, you have to join a large sect. With your physique and aptitude, you will definitely be valued by the sect. At that time, you will be able to use their various resources to cultivate. Therefore, you have to join a large sect. Murong nodded. he could only join a large sect. Otherwise, after the cultivation assembly, those people from the Sky Expanse sect would definitely make a move on him. Morong Yu, right? Not bad. Are you willing to join the Zhushenzong? At this moment, a sword ray tore through the air, and a tall and strong young man appeared in front of Morong Yu. He looked at Morong Yu with admiration. Zhushenzong? Why do you want to join the Zhushenzong? Morong Yu was startled. He looked at the young man in front of him and asked. Zhushenzong was one of the top 10 sects in the cultivation world. Its strength was comparable to the Sky Expanse sect, and its influence was incomparably huge. Gong Lianghao was startled. Contrary to Morong Yu's expectations, he was unhappy. Instead, he laughed loudly. Then, he patted Morong Yu's shoulder with great force, causing Morong Yu to grimace. Zhushenzong is one of the top 10 sections. Joining our sect will bring you benefits. Moreover, the most important thing is that you don't want to join the Sky Expanse sect. When I saw Zhao Hu's appearance, I felt happy. Ha! Gong Lianghao laughed loudly. Morong Yu's eyes flashed with a strange light. After hearing Gong Lianghao's words, it seemed that there was something wrong between the Zhushenzong and the Sky Expanse sect. Moreover, Gong Lianghao's words were filled with disdain toward Zhao Hu. How about it? Do you want to consider joining the Zhushenzong? With your aptitude and my protection, your journey in the Zhushenzong will definitely be smooth sailing. All right, since senior brother thinks so highly of me, I, Morong Yu, will join the Zhushenzong. Morong Yu pondered for a moment before deciding to join the Zhushenzong. One reason was because the Zhushenzong was one of the top 10 sects, and the other was because Gong Lianghao's temperament was very compatible with his. Not far away, the Sky Expanse sect Zhao, whose expression turned gloomy when he saw Morong Yu joining the Void Sky sect. His eyes were filled with killing intent as he constantly scanned Morong Yu. Junior brother, don't worry. If that bastard Zhao Hu dares to touch you, I will destroy him. Gong Lianghao's voice was like rolling thunder, spreading far and wide. However, it made Zhao Hu's face even uglier. After bidding farewell to Morong Yang, Morong Yu followed Gong Lianghao to the high platform. At this time, the top 10 sects had finished selecting their disciples. What was left was for the various sects to start recruiting disciples. Very quickly, all the sects had finished recruiting disciples. Some sects had already left the Purple Cloud Mountain and returned to their own sections. At this time, the disciples of the Morong family who came with them had all joined the Immortal Cultivation sect. However, more than half of the people on the Purple Cloud Mountain had not joined a cultivation sect. Their aptitudes were simply not good enough. Junior brother, let's go. Gong Lianghao called out to Morong Yu and was about to leave. Morong Yu glanced around and felt a little regretful. Morong Yang and Ling Yu did not appear in this cultivation convention. Morong Yu had already joined a cultivation sect. He probably would not have time to take revenge in the future. Perhaps, when I have time, I will return to the secular world. Morong Yu muttered to himself as he followed Gong Lianghao. Gong Lianghao then waved his hand, and a divine light enveloped the disciples of the Zhushenzong sect. Then, he took out a flying sword and quickly disappeared from the Purple Cloud Mountain with everyone. Morong Yu, who had joined the Zhushenzong sect, did not know that the reason he had obtained the Hichu Luoshu was because the disciples of the Tianyin sect and the Zhushenzong sect were fighting over it. Hichu Luoshu was originally obtained by a disciple of the Zhushenzong sect by accident. In the end, Morong Yu benefited from it. This time, Morong Yu had joined the Zhushenzong sect. In other words, the Hichu Luoshu had returned to the Zhushenzong sect. However, was this a blessing or a curse? Apart from Gong Lianghao and a few other disciples of the Zhushenzong sect, there were a total of 100 people who had joined the Zhushenzong sect. These 100 people were assisted by Gong Lianghao and the others. They rode their flying swords and flew in the direction of the Zhushenzong sect. You guys take care. Just as Gong Lianghao and the others left the Purple Cloud Mountain, a sword light quickly caught up from behind. After a loud roar, a group of people blocked in front of Gong Lianghao and the others. It was Zhao Hu and the others from the Tianyin sect. Gong Lianghao's face sank. He looked at Zhao Hu with murderous eyes and said coldly, Zhao Hu, what is the meaning of this? Do you want to start a war with me? As he spoke, Gong Lianghao looked at Zhao Hu with a murderous look. The flying sword on his feet trembled slightly, as if it was very excited. Zhao Hu's face froze. He looked at Gong Lianghao with some fear, but his eyes revealed a trace of hesitation. Gong Lianghao's strength was the same as his at the solitary spirit stage. However, Gong Lianghao was a madman. Once he started fighting, he would become a madman and would not stop until he was dead. In the cultivation world, solitary spirit stage cultivators were not considered experts. They could only be considered as mid-level existences. However, Gong Lianghao was not afraid of death and was slightly famous for his madness. During an expedition a few years ago, a quarrel broke out between them. At that time, Zhao Hu's strength was higher than Gong Lianghao's by a small stage. However, even so, Zhao Hu was almost killed by the crazy Gong Lianghao. Seeing Zhao Hu's expression, Gong Lianghao laughed coldly. Loser, if you don't want to die, then scram. Zhao Hu gritted his teeth and looked at Gong Lianghao with resentment. He couldn't help but remember the order that Outer Sect Elder Wei Shuiyin gave him when he left the sect. No matter what, you must bring Murong Yu back to the Tianyin sect. Even if you can't let him leave the Purple Cloud Mountain alive. Otherwise, you'll have to bear the consequences. Thinking of Wei Shuiyin, Zhao Hu couldn't help but feel a chill down his spine. Even though he was just an outer sect elder, it was nothing much to him. However, if she wanted to deal with a small solitary spirit stage disciple, it was enough. If he didn't kill Murong Yu this time, he would be the one to die when he returned to the sect. Zhao Hu steeled his heart and steeled himself. Die a fellow Taoist, he thought. Then he looked at Gong Lianghao and said coldly, Gong Lianghao, I'm not afraid of you. However, I'm not here to look for you today. I have some personal grudges with Murong Yu that I need to settle. I hope you won't interfere. Murong Yu narrowed his eyes. These idiots really came looking for him. However, just as he was about to speak, Gong Lianghao's thunderous voice spread far and wide. Bullshit! Junior brother Murong Yu is my Zushinzong's disciple. If you find trouble with him, it's the same as finding trouble with me. It's the same as finding trouble with me, Zushinzong. If you don't scram, I'll kill you. Murong Yu was startled and turned to look at Gong Lianghao with a strange look in his eyes. At this moment, Zhao Hu had an ugly expression on his face. Gong Lianghao, you better not interfere in this matter. Zhao Hu glared at Gong Lianghao and roared. Gong Lianghao sneered, I'm going to interfere in this matter. If you want to understand junior brother Murong Yu, you have to get through me first. However, how can a loser like you be my opponent? If you don't want to die, then scram. Chapter 47. You're courting death. Zhao Hu had been suppressing the anger in his heart. At this time, he finally exploded. With a roar, he waved his hand and teleported the others over. He slapped out a flying sword, which turned into a stream of light and attacked Gong Lianghao. Junior brothers, please protect these new junior brothers. I'll go teach this reckless brat a lesson. Gong Lianghao instructed the people of Zushinzong. Then, he looked at Murong Yu and smiled. Then his body swayed, and he flew into the sky on his flying sword. Bang! 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 The two of them stood in the void on their flying swords. They each controlled a flying sword and fought in the void. A terrifying aura burst out from the flying swords. When they collided, a terrifying shock wave burst out, tearing the sky and splitting the earth, destroying the heaven and earth. Rumble! The void also shook from the power of their fight. The ground under their feet was constantly shattered by the terrifying power, forcing Murong Yu and the others to retreat. Is this a battle between immortal cultivators? Looking at the battle between Gong Lianghao and Zhao Hu in the void, Murong Yu felt a little depressed. Although this kind of battle was extremely terrifying, it was not as hot-blooded as close combat. If it were Murong Yu, he'd definitely choose to fight in close combat. That would be a true battle. Boom! Gong Lianghao's flying sword suddenly released a terrifying divine light. It quickly enlarged in the void and turned into a shocking sword light. It carried a terrifying aura that could destroy the world and slash down. Zhao was shocked. He made a sword gesture and controlled his magic treasure to quickly meet the attack. Rumble. After a shocking explosion, Zhao flying sword was cut in half by Gong Lianghao's flying sword. The flying sword was connected to its master's mind. Therefore, after the flying sword was cut in half, Zhao mind was immediately injured. He spat out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying. Boom! Gong Lianghao's flying sword could not stop for a moment and continued to slash down. A terrifying power erupted, and it actually smashed a tall mountain down below into smithereens. The power of a single sword strike was so terrifying. Zhao was sent flying by the sword. He crashed into a small mountain and then flew back up on his sword. In the distance, he looked at Gong Lianghao in shock. A supreme-grade magic weapon. Gong Lianghao laughed heartily. He stretched out his hand and recalled the flying sword. It circled above his head and sprinkled down sword beams that enveloped Gong Lianghao. It is indeed a supreme-grade magical artifact. Tiger Zhao's face turned pale. Because his mind was injured, his aura was much weaker. So, it's a top-grade magic weapon. No wonder, no wonder. Zhao muttered to himself, but his heart was filled with a bitter taste. This is one of the mountain peaks where the outer court disciples live and cultivate. Today, you will temporarily stay here again. After I report this, I will send you your identity tokens tomorrow. At that time, you will officially become the sect's outer court disciples. Outer court disciples were the most ordinary disciples in Zhushenzong and even in other large sections. Apart from nominal disciples, it was their turn. Above the outer court disciples were the inner court disciples, core disciples, and true disciples. Gong Lianghao had already introduced them to them on the way. Junior brother Morong, you will temporarily stay here again today. After tomorrow, the sect will make arrangements for you. I still have to report the situation, so I will take my leave. Gong Lianghao said to Murongyu as he left. Murongyu smiled faintly. Then, Gong Lianghao and the others left. Then, Zhushenzong's disciples came to arrange accommodations for Murongyu and the others. Each person had a room. This was quite good treatment. We finally entered the cultivation world. After being given a room, Murongyu locked himself in his room. The room wasn't very big, but although it was small, it had all the essentials and all kinds of furnishings. There were also various jade slips that introduced the various situations of the cultivation world in Zhushenzong. Murongyu first picked up the jade slip that introduced Zhushenzong. Zhushenzong was indeed worthy of being one of the 10 great sections. Usually, you need to reach the foundation establishment stage to become an outer disciple. Otherwise, you can only be a nominal disciple. In that case, our treatment is still relatively good. We haven't even reached the foundation establishment stage yet, but we're already outer sect disciples. Murongyu said to himself as he looked at the jade slip. The identity of an outer disciple makes you so happy. You are really too useless. Hichu's disdainful voice sounded in Murongyu's ears. In a big sect like Zhushenzong, only by becoming a successor disciple can you get the greatest resources. At least you have to be a core disciple. Murongyu rolled his eyes and said speechlessly, Big brother, who do you think I am? I'm just an innate stage. Not to mention that a successor disciple needs to reach the spirit-severing stage. Even a core disciple needs to reach at least the spirit-severing stage. That is the existence I look up to now. The spirit-severing stage was not high, but it was still 4 stages higher than Murongyu. That was Gong Lianghao's current realm. With your physique and aptitude, it won't take long for you to reach the spirit-severing stage. Boy, you'd better reach the foundation establishment stage as soon as possible. Only when you reach that stage can you truly control Hichu Luoshu, and you can also open the first gift your teacher left for you. Murongyu's eyes turned into a trace of divine light, and his face showed a hopeful look as he said, It's just the foundation establishment stage, simple. In the following time, Murong had a good understanding of the history of Zhushenzong and the general situation of this cultivation world. The night passed peacefully. The next morning, someone from the Void Sky sect came to deliver their identity medallions. After arranging them, the jade slip engraved with various basic cultivation methods of Zhushenzong was given to them and let them start cultivating. However, what made Murong depressed was that they still lived in the same courtyard. Although everyone still had their own room, it was really inconvenient. However, Murong didn't say anything. After all, only after becoming an inner disciple would they have their own small courtyard. And it was said that after becoming a core disciple, they would have their own independent mountain peak. The entire mountain peak would be their own. Murong, do you want to go to the cafeteria and have a meal together? Murong walked out of his room and met a young man, and then the young man invited Murong enthusiastically. Eat? Murong was stunned, and then he remembered the introduction of the cafeteria. There was a cafeteria in Zhushenzong. However, it was different from the secular cafeteria. The food they ate was all kinds of spirit beasts, monster beasts, and all kinds of heavenly treasures. Even the rice they ate contained rich spirit chi. After satisfying their desire for good food, these dishes could also help them cultivate. It could even be said that they didn't eat rice, but heaven and earth essence chi. It is said that these dishes contain rich heaven and earth essence chi. I want to see it for myself. Murong smiled, and then walked together with the young man to the outer disciples' cafeteria. This young man and Murong were both from the Great Xia dynasty. He was one of the people who joined Zhushenzong this time, and his name was Wu Feng. Along the way, Murong had been full of praises. Murong, on the other hand, had only responded with a grunt every now and then. Not long after, the two of them entered the cafeteria. The moment they entered the cafeteria, Murong saw a familiar figure. Then he squinted his eyes, and a fierce murderous intent burst out. Chapter 48. It's really a case of wearing out iron shoes in a fruitless search, only to find it without any effort. I thought there would be no chance for revenge. I didn't expect to meet you here. Murong's eyebrows flashed with a cold, murderous intent. He looked at the two people in the cafeteria, a man and a woman. Murong Ling, Murong Yen. Murong saw these two people. After seeing these two people, Murong's murderous intent burst out uncontrollably. It was extremely terrifying. Murong didn't even think about why these two people would appear here. The first person to feel Murong's change was Wu Feng beside him. Wu Feng frowned slightly and looked at Murong. Do those two people have a grudge against you? Murong nodded and sneered. Then, he strode towards Murong Ling and Murong. Perhaps he felt Murong's murderous intent. Murong, who was sitting there eating with his back to Murong Ling, suddenly turned his head and looked back. He just happened to meet Murong's murderous eyes. Murong Ling frowned slightly and showed a touch of displeasure in his eyes. Murong Yen, who was beside him, also noticed that something was wrong with Murong Ling. Brother, what's wrong? Murong Ling sneered and said disdainfully, Nothing, I just saw trash that I don't want to see. At the same time, Murong Ling felt very strange in his heart. That day, he kicked Murong off the cliff. Murong didn't die. On the contrary, he appeared in Zhushenzong. On that day, Murong Ling returned home and left Murong's house the next day. Since then, he had never returned to Murong's house. Not long ago, they all joined Zhushenzong. Trash? Murong? Isn't he dead? Murong Yin turned her head and followed Murong Ling's gaze. The moment she saw Murong, her expression suddenly changed, as if she had seen a ghost. Maybe he was saved by someone. Murong Ling sneered and turned his head away, ignoring Murong. At this moment, Murong had already walked over with large strides. Ling Murong, long time no see. Murong's voice was low and deep, containing a fierce, killing intent. Murong Ling's face darkened. He turned his head and looked at Murong. You piece of trash, what qualifications do you have to enter this cafeteria? Get the hell out of here. As he spoke, Murong Ling slapped Murong. A cold light flashed in Murong Yu's eyes. After not seeing him for a few months, Murong Ling's realm had risen to acquired level 9. However, he still hadn't reached the innate realm. Therefore, he couldn't even see through Murong Yu's realm. He thought that Murong Yu was still the trash that couldn't practice martial arts. However, even so, he didn't hold back. His slap even made a sonic boom. If it was an ordinary person, they would have been slapped to death. His attack was still vicious. "You're courting death." Murong used killing intent sword. He shouted coldly and quickly slapped out. Although he moved later, he was the first to arrive. Slap. After a crisp sound, Murong Yu slapped Murong Ling's face. The huge force directly sent Murong Ling flying. In the process, a few white teeth flew out of Murong Ling's mouth. Murong Yu stepped on the flying cloud 4 steps and rushed up. He used the elephant drawing fist to send Murong Ling flying again. Then, he slapped Murong Ling to the ground again. "What the hell? How dare you be so presumptuous in the outer disciples' canteen? Spit out everything you ate." Murong Yu sneered and stepped on Murong Ling's chest. Crack! Murong Ling's chest caved in immediately. Blood, mixed with some things, spurted out of his mouth. Murong Ling almost fainted from the pain. However, his face was filled with disbelief as he looked at Murong Yu in shock. He didn't even know how the trash Murong Yu suddenly became so strong. "What about you?" Murong Yu slapped Murong Ling's other face until it swelled up. Stepping on Murong Ling's body, Murong Yu finally felt that he had taken revenge. "Murong Yu, you trash, I'll kill you." At this time, a sharp voice came from behind Murong Yu, followed by a sharp sound of breaking the air. "Chi!" Murong Ling held a long sword, cut through the space, and directly stabbed Murong Yu's body. Seeing this scene, the people in the canteen couldn't help but exclaim. They all thought that Murong Yu would die under this sword. However, before they could see the scene in their imagination, an even more shocking scene happened in front of them. Crack! Murong Ling's sword stabbed Murong Yu's body with all her strength, wanting to pierce through his heart. Murong Ling's face even showed a pleased expression. However, just as the long sword stabbed Murong Yu's body, Murong Ling felt as if she had stabbed a piece of divine iron. She couldn't pierce through it all. On the contrary, a strong force came from the rebound, and the long sword in her hand was broken. What a joke! The long sword in Murong Ling's hand was just a secular weapon. Murong Yu's body had already reached the strength of a low-grade magic weapon. Even a mid-grade magic weapon couldn't easily tear Murong Yu's body apart, let alone these ordinary weapons. "Get lost." Murong Yu's eyes flashed with murderous intent. He hated Murong Ling's vicious heart very much. He let out a low growl and kicked Murong Yin in the abdomen, sending her flying with a kick. Bang! Murong Ling fell hard on the ground in the distance. There was no sound, and no one knew whether she was dead or alive. "Murong Yu, how dare you treat me like this? You're dead, you're dead." Murong Ling looked at Murong Yu with resentment and said through gritted teeth. Murong Yu sneered in his heart. "You're allowed to treat me like this, but I can't do the same to you? How did you treat me in the past?" As he spoke, Murong Yu stepped out. Crack! Murong Ling let out a blood-curdling scream. In the next moment, he looked at Murong Yu with a face full of terror and resentment. "You actually crippled my cultivation. You're dead." After destroying his cultivation, Murong Ling instantly became a useless person. Murong Yu sneered. "You kicked me off the cliff that day. Killing you is too easy. However, since you and I are both members of the Murong family, I won't kill you cold-bloodedly. I just destroyed your cultivation. You should thank me." Murong Ling's face was full of resentment. In this world where strength was respected, what could be crueler than destroying one's cultivation? Destroying one's cultivation was much crueler than killing him. "Murong Yu, you're dead. My uncle will not let you go." Murong Ling roared to the sky. His tone was more resentful than a poisonous snake, full of endless resentment. "Get lost." Murong Yu frowned slightly and kicked Murong Ling out of the cafeteria. In the cafeteria, Murong Yu destroyed Murong Ling and severely injured Murong Ling. He was extremely powerful. The entire cafeteria was filled with Zhuxianzong's outer disciples. At this moment, seeing that Murong Yu directly destroyed Murong Ling, everyone just looked at Murong Yu in surprise. Although the sect would not suppress this situation very much, and would even secretly encourage the disciples to fight amongst themselves, the sect would not be able to do anything about it. After all, a peaceful sect could not always maintain its strength. If the sect wanted to become stronger and stronger, it did not rely on the cultivation of these disciples, but on competition. With competition, there would be motivation to cultivate. It was precisely because of this that the strength between the major sects would become greater and greater. However, competition was competition. Fighting was good, but it was only similar to learning from each other. Revenge killing was absolutely prohibited. Murong Yu's action was clearly revenge killing. He destroyed Murong Ling's cultivation. This kind of thing was prohibited by the sect. Of course, it did not mean that this kind of situation would not happen if the sect prohibited it. It was just that this kind of thing generally happened in secret. However, Murong Yu destroyed an outer disciple openly in the cafeteria. It had to be said that Murong Yu was extremely daring. Murong Yu just glanced at the crowd indifferently, then ordered his meal. He could not be bothered with these people. However, compared to Murong Yu's calmness, Wu Feng, who was with him, was not calm at all. This person is vicious and merciless, and he kills decisively. I can only be friends with him and absolutely cannot be his enemy. Otherwise, my end will be extremely miserable. Wu Feng's eyes flashed, and many thoughts flashed through his mind. In an instant, he decided his attitude towards Murong Yu. Then, Wu Feng followed Murong Yu with a smile on his face. What Wu Feng didn't know was that the decision he made today would change his fate. Seeing that after Murong Yu destroyed Murong Ling, he was still eating as if nothing had happened. Those outer disciples were a little speechless, but they were somewhat impressed. This was especially true for those senior outer sect disciples. They knew Murong Ling's identity. Hey, do you know that Murong Ling? I heard that he has a young uncle who is a core disciple and is very powerful. Murong Ling was brought back by him. I don't know who this person is, but he actually destroyed Murong Ling. An outer disciple looked at Murong Yu and sneered. Excluding those registered disciples and odd job workers, the outer disciples were the disciples with the lowest status in Zhuxianzong, and the core disciples were above the inner disciples. They were already the real core disciples of Zhuxianzong. To put it bluntly, the registered disciples, outer disciples, and inner disciples were not even the real disciples of Zhuxianzong. Only the core disciples, or those above the core disciple level, were considered the backbone of Zhuxianzong. After all, those who had not reached the core disciple level were not even at the silent spirit stage. The silent spirit stage was only a mid-level existence in the cultivation world. Once something happened to the sect, these core disciples, or true disciples, could be relied on to turn the tide. Chapter 49. If Zhuxianzong encountered any disaster, these outer and inner disciples would be cannon fodder. Are you talking about Wei Han? It is said that Wei Han's aptitude is very good. Although he has just been promoted to a core disciple, he already has a very high status. Another outer disciple exclaimed. Wei Han was Murong Ling's uncle. He was promoted to a core disciple not long ago and was in the spirit solitary stage. However, his aptitude was good. It was said that he was taken care of by a true disciple and was considered a relatively powerful person among the core disciples. Core disciple, spirit solitary stage. Many disciples in the cafeteria revealed envious expressions after hearing Wei Han's name. When can I become a core disciple? Someone sighed. It's very simple. When you break through to the spirit solitary stage, you will naturally be promoted to a core disciple. However, you have cultivated for more than 100 years and barely managed to reach the foundation establishment stage. You will only be an outer disciple for the rest of your life. Someone laughed and said. Listening to these people's discussion, Wu Feng's expression changed. However, when he looked at Mu Rongyu, he found that Mu Rongyu was calmly eating. These things are pretty good. Mu Rongyu praised as he stuffed himself with the food. These foods were filled with spirit qi. They were many times more delicious than the food in the secular world, and they were filled with spirit qi. Mu Rongyu, aren't you worried? That is a spirit solitary stage core disciple. Wu Feng's expression kept changing. After struggling for a long time, he finally asked. Mu Rongyu raised his head and looked at Wu Feng. He smiled and said, "What am I worried about? The opponent is a core disciple, a spirit solitary stage expert. He can crush me with one finger." Wu Feng was very surprised and asked, "Since that is the case, why aren't you worried? Whether it is power or strength, the opponent is far stronger than me. Is there any use for me to worry? If I am worried, won't he come find trouble with me? Moreover, since I dared to cripple Murong Ling, I naturally have my own plans. We'll just deal with whatever comes our way. What's there to worry about?" Murong Yu indifferently replied. In reality, it was just as he'd said. Core disciple Wei Han really wasn't a threat to him. If Wei Han really lowered his status and came to find trouble with him, a Xiantian realm warrior, Murong Yu would accept it. At worst, he could just hide in the Hichu Luoshu world and not come out. Moreover, Murong Yu firmly believed that as long as he was given a period of time, his strength would rapidly increase. Right now, he was only a Xiantian realm martial artist. If he was given a few years, he believed that he would be able to trample a spirit tranquil stage expert under his feet. Looking at the calm expression on Murong Yu's face, Wu Feng's admiration for him grew. His desire to follow Murong Yu in the future became more and more firm. After having a big meal in the cafeteria, Murong Yu leisurely returned to the courtyard and entered his room to cultivate. "Murong Yu, get out here." Just as he was about to enter the Hichu Luoshu world, Murong Yu shouted. Just as he was about to enter the Hichu Luoshu world, a thunderous voice filled with killing intent came from the front of the courtyard and spread throughout the entire mountain peak. "Trouble is here." Murong Yu frowned slightly and sneered in his heart. He opened the door and walked out. "Boss Murong, this should be Wei Han." Wu Feng hurriedly walked over and just happened to see Murong Yu coming out of the room. The reason why he was certain of the other party's identity was because this person was currently floating in the air on his sword in front of the courtyard. Beside him was the Ling siblings, Murong and Ling, with a look of resentment on their faces. "Which dog is barking here?" Murong Yu slowly walked out and looked at Wei Han, who was floating in the air, and said coldly. Wei Han's voice contained true inner force. His loud roar had already alarmed the outer sect disciples in the nearby mountain peaks. Just as everyone was wondering who it was that had come to look for Murong Yu's voice slowly drifted out. His voice was not loud, but it spread out very clearly. As a result, many outer sect disciples in the vicinity were alarmed. In an instant, countless outer sect disciples left the room and walked out. As for the disciples from the other mountain peaks, they directly flew over on their swords or used their divine consciousness to check. With one look, they were all shocked by Wei Han's cultivation. This was because they, as outer sect disciples, could not see the depth of Wei Han's cultivation at all. However, when they saw Murong Yu's cultivation, they were even more shocked. This was because Murong Yu was only in the Khanate realm. How could a Khanate realm cultivator challenge someone who was at least an inner sect disciple? Was there something wrong with this new outer sect disciple's brain? Everyone felt a little dizzy. "You're Murong Yu?" When he saw Murong Yu walking out leisurely, a cold killing intent flashed in Wei Han's eyes. The sharp killing intent spread out and was extremely terrifying. At the same time, an extremely terrifying aura swept over like a stormy sea, wanting to tear Murong Yu apart. Humph! Wu Feng, who had been following Murong Yu, and some of the nearby outer sect disciples who were in the revolving reflection stage, could not help but groan and were directly shaken back. If it wasn't for the fact that Wei Han was only targeting Murong Yu, he could have used his spirit tranquil stage aura to turn these people into ashes. Murong Yu's eyes narrowed slightly, and a cold, killing intent flashed in his eyes. At this moment, his body shook violently, and an aura that was not inferior to Wei Han's erupted from his body, directly offsetting Wei Han's aura that swept over. Seeing this scene, Wei Han and the nearby people could not help but be slightly surprised. Murong Yu was only in the Khanate realm. How could he have such a powerful aura? At this time, Murong Ling, whose face was full of resentment, looked at Murong Yu and said with gritted teeth, "Uncle, he's the one who crippled me. You must kill him. Trash." Before Wei Han had time to speak, Murong Yu sneered disdainfully. Clang! Wei Han's eyes flashed with killing intent, and after a crisp sound, a green light flashed through the void, carrying a terrifying killing intent. It passed through the void and directly shot towards Murong Yu. Flying sword. Wei Han made his move. The surrounding people were shocked. They did not expect that Wei Han would actually make a move to kill an outer sect disciple in the Khanate realm. However, on second thought, they already understood. Murong Yu was just an outer sect disciple who had just joined the sect and was in the Khanate realm. Wei Han was a core disciple. A core disciple killing an outer sect disciple was not a big deal in Zushinzong. In fact, the sect didn't even give him a word of punishment. Looking at the green light and feeling the fierce killing intent, Murong Yu narrowed his eyes slightly, and the killing intent in his heart surged. However, he was not afraid at all. A mere spiritual silent stage cultivator wanted to kill him? This was tantamount to a fool's dream. However, it seemed that the secret of Hichu Luoshu would be exposed. Murong Yu was a little unhappy. Once he entered the Hichu Luoshu world, Wei Han, who was in the spiritual silent stage, would not be able to do anything to him. However, Murong Yu did not want to expose his territory too early. However, this was the only thing he could do now. Otherwise, he would definitely be turned into a bloody mist by Wei Han's flying sword. These bastards. If the secret of Hichu Luoshu is exposed today, I can just leave. However, it's a pity for the great sect of Zushinzong. Murong Yu's killing intent surged, and he was about to enter the Hichu Luoshu world. However, at this moment, a white light tore through the void from afar like a shooting star at an extremely terrifying speed. Clang! After a loud sound, the white light slashed onto the green light, and a loud sound was heard. However, Wei Han's flying sword was sent flying. At this moment, everyone finally saw that the white light was also a flying sword. Murong Yu was about to enter the Hichu Luoshu, but after seeing this scene, he was slightly surprised and did not continue to enter the Hichu Luoshu. Interesting, there is actually someone who would help. Murong Yu's heart skipped a beat. Looking at the flying sword floating in the void, he felt that it was somewhat familiar. Could it be? Murong Yu's mind suddenly flashed with a person shadow. Wei Han, you have really given us the core disciple's face. A spiritual silent stage cultivator actually wants to attack a Khanate stage junior brother. You are getting more and more shameless. At this moment, a disdainful voice was heard. In the next moment, a figure on a sword flew over from afar and landed in front of Murong Yu. Murong Yu's eyes flashed. It is indeed him. Then he bowed slightly. So, is senior brother Gong Lianghao? Thank you. Murong Yu was sincerely grateful to Gong Lianghao. Although he did not understand why Gong Lianghao appeared in time to protect his secret, but Gong Lianghao had really saved him. Gong Lianghao, this has nothing to do with you. You better mind your own business. Seeing that the person who came was Gong Lianghao, Wei Han's face immediately darkened. Scram! Gong Lianghao first turned to look at Murong Yu and smiled, then turned to look at Wei Han and shouted. Wei Han's face was ugly, and traces of sharp, killing intent shot out from his eyes. Gong Lianghao sneered. I will give you 10 breaths of time. If you don't scram, don't blame me for being merciless. Gong Lianghao, do you think I am afraid of you? Wei Han's killing intent surged as he looked at Gong Lianghao with a gloomy face. His eyes were filled with hatred. It seemed that the two of them were old acquaintances, and they even had a grudge against each other. Seeing this scene, Murong Yu's eyes flashed with a trace of light. Ha ha! Gong Lianghao laughed loudly, and then his face suddenly turned cold. Chi! The flying sword that was floating in front of him tore through the void and expanded with the wind, slashing down on Wei Han, and the siblings Murong and Ling. Wei Han's face suddenly changed, and he roared angrily, controlling the green flying sword to meet the attack. Bang! The green flying sword was directly sent flying. And because of this, Wei Han's mind was also damaged, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Although they were both at the spiritual silence stage, Wei Han was no match for Gong Lianghao. Chapter 50. Gong Lianghao, I'll give you face today. I'll leave for now, Wei Han said coldly as his eyes flashed with killing intent. Then, he looked at Murong Yu fiercely. Murong Yu, you crippled Murong Ling. I'll take your life personally in the future. You better follow behind Gong Lianghao forever. Before he finished speaking, Wei Han had already turned into a stream of light and left on his sword. Uncle, are you going to let Murong Yu go just like that? After leaving, Murong Ling asked bitterly. Wei Han Dun was enraged and almost killed Murong Ling with a slap. He had always thought that Murong Ling was talented and had potential. However, he now realized that this guy was an idiot. It was obvious that he was no match for Gong Lianghao. With Gong Lianghao protecting Murong Yu, how could he kill Murong Yu? Moreover, even if he let Murong Yu go today, as long as Gong Lianghao is not here in the future, he naturally had many ways to kill Murong Yu. I'll get you an elixir so that you can cultivate again, Wei Han said coldly after throwing Murong Ling and Murong Yu down. Then, he disappeared on his sword. I can cultivate again? Murong Ling asked happily. However, Wei Han had already disappeared. Thank you for your help, senior brother Gong Liang. I'll definitely repay you in the future. Seeing that Wei Han had left, Murong Yu thanked him. Gong Lianghao only smiled. Wei Han, this bastard, is narrow-minded and vengeful. Although I can suppress him, as he said, once I'm not here, he'll find a way to kill you. So, you should be careful. Murong Yu only smiled faintly. He's just a clown. I'm not afraid of him. As long as I have enough time, I'll be able to step on him. A glint flashed across Murong Yu's eyes, causing Gong Lianghao to be shocked. All right, Wei Han won't look for trouble with you in the near future. You can cultivate in peace and break through to the foundation establishment stage as soon as possible and become an official cultivator. Gong Lianghao smiled and then flicked his flying sword, which turned into a streak of light and flew away. Looking at these experts flying around, the other outer disciples of Zushenzong like Murong, you were all envious. Even Murong, you was a little envious in his heart. And let's go back and cultivate now, and strive to reach the foundation establishment stage as soon as possible. Facing Wei Han, Murong Yu felt a lot of pressure. At the same time, Murong Yu felt particularly powerless in the face of someone who was many times stronger than him. He couldn't hide in Hichu, Luoshu, every time he encountered danger, right? Murong Yu did not dare to reveal his trump card unless it was absolutely critical. Once it was discovered, perhaps even those experts in the transformation stage would try to snatch it. At that time, with Murong Yu's strength, he wouldn't even have a chance to fight back. However, while they were envious of these people flying around, these disciples were also looking at Murong Yu with envy. Although Murong Yu offended Wei Han, a core disciple, he made friends with Gong Lianghao, a core disciple who was even stronger than Wei Han. With Gong Lianghao's protection, Murong Yu would definitely have an easier time in Zushenzong. As the saying goes, with someone above, it would be convenient to do anything. Wu Feng looked at Murong Yu with admiration, and his desire to follow him became even more firm. After returning to his room, Murong Yu closed the door and disappeared on the spot, entering the Hichu, Luoshu world to cultivate. Whether it was safety or the concentration of spirit qi, the Hichu Luoshu world was several times stronger than Zushenzong. Within half a year, I must break through to the foundation establishment stage. Murong Yu sat cross-legged on the ground and muttered to himself. After breaking through to the foundation establishment stage, Murong Yu would not only become an official disciple of Zushenzong, but also because once he broke through to this stage, he would be able to unlock the first seal of the Hichu Luoshu world. At that time, a portion of the wealth left behind by war god Zhao Yun would be unsealed and become Murong Yu's possession. In the following time, Murong Yu cultivated in the Hichu Luoshu world while occasionally going to the outer disciples' cafeteria to eat a spirit chi feast. Just as Gong Lianghao said, Wei Han didn't come to find trouble with him in the following time. He didn't know if it was because of Gong Lianghao's deterrence or because he was restrained by others. Murong Yu thought for a moment. Although Gong Lianghao was much stronger than Wei Han, but he definitely couldn't intimidate Wei Han. After all, they were both in the spirit silence stage. Murong Yu's guess was right. Not long after, he heard that Wei Han had actually gone out to train. Once he came back from his training, he would definitely find trouble with him. And what made Murong Yu the most depressed was that he actually met Murong Ling in the cafeteria again. Murong Ling wasn't expelled from Zushenzong because he could cultivate again. When Murong Yu found out about this, he was extremely depressed. He didn't know that although he had crippled Murong Ling's cultivation, it was only the power of a martial artist. In front of a cultivator, these were not the same thing. With just one pill, Murong Ling would be able to recover his cultivation. Of course, if Murong Ling's strength entered the foundation establishment stage or was crippled after reaching a higher stage, it wouldn't be something that could be solved with just one pill. Even if he could recover his cultivation, he would need to pay an extremely high price. However, even though Murong Yu was depressed, he didn't have the interest to teach Murong Ling a lesson. Moreover, after meeting Murong Yu, Murong Ling would naturally retreat and not dare to provoke Murong Yu. Time flowed like water, and in a flash, 3 months had passed. After obtaining the Hichu Luoshu world, Murong Yu used 3 months to reach the Xiantian stage. After reaching the Xiantian stage, Murong Yu was already considered an expert in the secular world. Moreover, this wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was that Murong Yu had a systematic understanding of cultivation. Therefore, in the following period of time, Murong Yu's cultivation speed became faster and faster. In 3 months, Murong Yu had already broken through to the 7th level of the Xiantian stage. In another 3 months, Murong Yu had reached the peak of the Xiantian stage, with a strength of 200 kuei long. After being tempered, his physical body strength was comparable to a mid-grade magic artifact. In fact, it was even stronger than a mid-grade magic artifact. Half a year later, on this day, Murong Yu, who was cultivating, suddenly had a thought. Then, an aura that was dozens or even hundreds of times stronger than before burst out from his body and rushed into the sky. At this time, the barrier of Murong Yu's realm seemed to be torn apart in an instant. Finally, his realm had stepped into the foundation establishment stage from the peak of the Xiantian stage, and he had become a real cultivator. He had stepped into the threshold of a cultivator. Traces of black true inner force constantly escaped from Murong Yu's body, and then lingered on the surface of his body, reflecting his whole body in a hazy light, making it difficult to see clearly. An extremely powerful and terrifying force was emitted, and the western sky split open, sweeping through the world. If the aura of the 9th level of the Xiantian stage could be compared to a small river, then after breaking through to the foundation establishment stage, Murong Yu's aura was like a surging river or an erupting torrent. Murong Yu stood up, feeling his own strength, and couldn't help but roar to the sky. After a long time, the true inner force on the surface of his body was withdrawn, and his whole body suddenly returned to normal. Foundation establishment stage, I finally stepped into the threshold of a cultivator. Murong Yu's face revealed a smile as he secretly thought to himself. Only after entering the foundation establishment stage could one officially become a cultivator. Although it was only the lowest level, it could definitely kill any peak Xiantian stage expert in the secular world. Most importantly, after reaching the foundation establishment stage, one could fly on a sword. Moreover, one could use many kinds of magic arts, which were much more powerful than Xiantian stage experts. At this moment, Murong Yu even felt that he could even kill dozens of peak Xiantian stage 9 experts with one punch. With a thought, 10 divine dragons appeared in the void above Murong Yu's head, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. They were the Panliang, which was much more powerful than the Flood Dragon and the Kuei Dragon. The Panliang was also a kind of dragon, but it was much more powerful than the Flood Dragon and the Kuei Dragon. It was the dragon strength of a cultivator in the Foundation establishment stage. However, it was unknown whether it was because Murong Yu practiced the record of the chaotic celestial body or because he had the chaotic celestial body constitution, but he was now only in the early stage of the Foundation establishment stage. But he already had the strength of 10 Panliang. Ordinary cultivators, even in the early stages of the Foundation establishment stage, could only have the strength of 10 Panliang at most. However, Murong Yu, who was 2 stages lower, had the strength of 10 Panliang. One could imagine how powerful Murong Yu was. If other magical treasures were not taken into consideration, Murong Yu is definitely an invincible existence in the Foundation establishment stage. In addition to the earth-shaking changes in his strength, Murong Yu's physical strength had also surpassed the strength of a middle-grade magical treasure. Magical treasures were the divine weapons used by cultivators. However, they were extremely rare. Even Zuxianzong's core disciple, Gong Lianghao, only had a high-grade magical treasure in his hands. Spiritual treasures, which were above magical treasures, were like immortal treasures and were extremely rare. In other words, the most common magical treasures in the cultivation world were ordinary magical treasures. However, Murong Yu's physical body had already surpassed the hardness of a middle-grade magical treasure. In other words, his physical body was already equivalent to a middle-grade magical treasure. Moreover, as Murong Yu became stronger, his physical body would also continue to strengthen. Eventually, it would become a spiritual treasure, or even a legendary immortal treasure. Of course, after breaking through to the Foundation establishment stage, Murong Yu's gains were definitely not limited to that. In addition to the breakthrough in strength and physical body, there was also a breakthrough in lifespan. 2,000 years of lifespan. That's too little. Murong Yu felt his lifespan and said with a frown. However, if other cultivators in the Foundation establishment stage found out that he was not satisfied with his lifespan of 2,000 years in the Foundation establishment stage, he was afraid that he would be beaten up by those people. Lifespan, which was also one's lifespan. It was originally an illusory thing, and no one could tell how much lifespan one had. However, as a cultivator, one could vaguely feel their own lifespan. Chapter 51. At this moment, Murong Yu felt that his lifespan had directly increased to around 2,000 years. It should be known that ordinary people only live for a few decades or 100 years. Xiantian experts already have a lifespan of 500 years. After entering the Foundation establishment stage, one's lifespan would double, reaching 1,000 years. Late Foundation establishment stage, 1,000 years. As for the early stage of Foundation establishment, it would only be 700 to 800 years. Just like the strength of a dragon, the more powerful one is, the longer one's lifespan. Murong Yu's lifespan was as strong as his strength of a dragon. Just early Foundation establishment stage, he already had a lifespan of 2,000 years. His lifespan was as long as late revolving reflection stage experts. Cultivators, on the other hand, were not troubled by illness. In other words, as long as they didn't die by accident, an ordinary late Foundation establishment stage cultivator could live for 1,000 years. If it didn't break through, they would die of old age. However, even if Murong Yu didn't break through to the revolving reflection stage, he could still live for 2,000 years. This was the difference. Originally, Murong Yu's strength and aptitude were extremely strong. Now that he had so much more lifespan than ordinary people, even if he didn't deliberately cultivate, he would still have enough time to break through. This was the difference between a genius and an ordinary person. Only 2,000 years of lifespan. It's really too short. Muronyu said with some emotion. 2,000 years, to those experienced cultivators, was just a blink of an eye. The distance to immortality was really not worth mentioning. Shua, just as Muronyu was sighing, Hichu's figure suddenly appeared in front of him. Little brat, not bad. After breaking through to the foundation establishment stage in year, you can now open the first layer of the seal and obtain the things your teacher left for you. Hichu said with a smile. Muronyu nodded, his face revealing a trace of excitement. The Hichu Luoshu was the #1 book in the world. Although it wasn't known who created it, its previous owner was war god Zhao Yun. War god Zhao Yun had also cultivated from the mortal world. Along the way, he became one of the strongest people in the world and collected countless treasures. Among them, the lowest level treasures could only be used after reaching the foundation establishment stage. This included pills, weapons, and magic treasures. In fact, the first layer of the Hichu Luoshu's seal had already been automatically unsealed when Muronyu broke through to the foundation establishment stage. At this moment, with a thought, Muronyu disappeared from his original position and appeared in an independent space inside the Hichu Luoshu. Shua. As soon as Muronyu appeared in this space, an extremely rich medicinal fragrance assailed his nostrils. In that instant, Muronyu felt like he was in the 100 Flowers Valley. Muronyu took a deep breath and inhaled the medicinal fragrance. Immediately, he felt refreshed. He even felt as if he had been reborn. With such a rich medicinal fragrance, the energy within Murongyu's body seemed to have grown even stronger. What a strong medicinal pill is. The pills here. Muronyu looked over. In the next moment, his expression changed greatly, and he looked in front of him with an expression of disbelief. In front of them, there were mountains that were so tall that their peaks could not be seen. They stood tall and straight on the ground, with no end in sight. And what shocked Muronyu was these mountains. This was because these mountain ranges were not real mountain ranges, but mountain ranges formed by piles of medicinal pills. Recovery pills, true elemental pills, clear mind pills, clear mind pills, clear mind detoxification pills. All kinds of pills were piled up like gravel, creating a strong visual impact on Muronyu. This is simply an ocean of medicinal pills. Muronyu was shocked. It took him half a day to recover from his shock. An ocean of pills, a continuous mountain range formed by different types of pills, was piled up in this space. He couldn't see the end of it at a glance. Tribulation pills, soul recovery pills, injury recovery pills, all kinds of pills were endless. Among them, recovery pills were the most numerous, all kinds of pills like the stars in the sky. For a moment, Muronyu didn't know how many types of pills there were. Looking at the endless amount of pills, Muronyu was shocked. He looked at the ocean of pills with a dull face. After half a day, he finally reacted. Pills were the foundation of a cultivator. Although a cultivator didn't have the same illness as a mortal because they went against the heavens, they would suffer all kinds of disasters and all kinds of pain. Therefore, they needed a large amount of pills. However, there were some pills that had special effects. For example, recovery pills contained a large amount of elemental chi, which could directly provide elemental chi for cultivators to cultivate. Another example was tribulation pills. The so-called tribulation pills were a kind of pill to deal with the heavenly tribulation. As a cultivator, after every stage of cultivation, the heavens would send down the heavenly tribulation. Other than the tribulation stage, although the tribulation stage wasn't very scary, there were still many cultivators who were directly killed by the tribulation and turned into ashes. And with tribulation pills, it increased the chances of passing the tribulation by 50%. Legend has it that there was a kind of tribulation pill that increased the chances of passing the tribulation stage experts. Of course, that kind of pill was basically extinct. Looking at the pills in front of him, Muronyu calmed down after a long time. So many pills. I'm afraid that even the 10 great sects together don't have this many pills, right? Then, his figure flashed and disappeared from the pill space. When he reappeared, he was already in another space. Different from the pill space, which was filled with all kinds of pill fragrance, this space was filled with a murderous aura. Waves of fierce, murderous aura swept in from all directions, wanting to directly crush Muronyu. On the ground, in the void, everywhere one looked, there were all kinds of divine weapons. Flying swords and magic treasures were thrown on the ground like trash. It was like a sea of swords and knives. Of course, there weren't as many of these things as the pills, otherwise it would be heaven-defying. Due to the fact that Muronyu was sealed in this space, even if those divine weapons could emit a powerful pressure, they couldn't harm him. Looking at these divine weapons, Muronyu wasn't very shocked. After all, he was already shocked by those pills. Moreover, relatively speaking, Muronyu liked pills more than all kinds of magic treasures and flying swords. Elixirs could heal injuries and provide vital energy. However, divine weapons and magic treasures were only a means of support. Moreover, Muronyu didn't want to rely too much on these divine weapons. Muronyu grabbed a flying sword in the air and covered it with his divine perception. Then, his face twitched. A first-grade spirit weapon. Muronyu threw away the flying sword in his hand and grabbed a lantern-shaped magic treasure. Finally, Muronyu threw away these magic treasures and directly enveloped these divine weapons and magic treasures with his divine perception. Not long after, everyone was shocked. Muronyu didn't like these divine weapons and magic treasures too much. This was because among these seemingly endless divine weapons and magic treasures, the lowest grade was a first-grade spirit weapon, and the highest grade was a ninth-grade spirit weapon. In the cultivation world, divine weapons and magic treasures were generally divided into low, middle, and high grades. Above magic treasures were spirit weapons, but the grades were different from magic treasures. Spirit weapons had a total of 9 grades, from first grade to ninth grade. Among them, first-grade spirit weapons were the lowest grade, and ninth grade was the highest. And above spirit weapons were the legendary immortal weapons. Those were things used by immortals, and far surpassed all the divine weapons and magic treasures in the cultivation world. A ninth-grade spirit weapon. If I had a ninth-grade spirit weapon, I'm afraid I could directly kill a disciple in the revolving reflection stage. I could even fight a cultivator in the fusion stage. Muronyu muttered in his heart. In addition to the space for pills and divine weapons and magic treasures, the first layer of the seal also had all kinds of refining materials and medicine materials. But Muronyu wasn't interested in those. These things should be enough for me to use until the transformation stage. After Muronyu left these spaces, he muttered to himself. Such amazing wealth was enough for him to cultivate until the transformation stage. But this was only the first layer of the seal. According to Hichu, there was another layer of the seal that could be unlocked before the transformation stage. This made Muronyu even more expectant. After all, this was only the first layer of the seal, and also the lowest grade of the seal. But even so, Muronyu's wealth was comparable to that of the top 10 sections. So, what was in the second layer of the seal? Muronyu was very much looking forward to it. I finally broke through to the foundation establishment stage. It's time to go to the sect. Muronyu smiled slightly and was about to leave the Hichu Luoshu world. In Zushinzong, once a cultivator became a foundation establishment stage cultivator, they had to go to the sect to file a record. At that time, they would be issued an identity token, a flying sword, and even more advanced cultivation methods. Let's go get a token first. Muronyu laughed in his heart, and with a thought, he had already left the Hichu Luoshu world. However, just as Muronyu stepped out of the Hichu Luoshu world, a large amount of dark clouds instantly condensed in the sky above the mountain. A vast power of heaven and earth directly descended from the sky, and a terrifying aura suppressed the 10 directions of heaven and earth, extremely terrifying. And someone in the sect is going through a tribulation? The moment these dark clouds appeared, the experts in Zushinzong discovered the strangeness here. With their profound cultivation, they instantly saw that these dark clouds were extraordinary, because these dark clouds were tribulation clouds. Who was going through a tribulation? Tribulation clouds actually appeared above the outer court Disciples' Mountain. While the experts in Zhushenzong were surprised, they discovered that the tribulation clouds only shrouded some of the outermost mountain peaks in Zhushenzong. In fact, the tribulation clouds mainly shrouded the mountain peak where Murongyu was at. A huge pressure descended, and the disciples in the nearby mountain peaks felt that it was difficult to breathe, and their faces turned pale. After all, in the face of a heavenly tribulation with the power of heaven and earth, these people with low cultivation were simply unable to resist. Not to mention the outer core disciples, even the experts with profound cultivation were distressed in the face of a heavenly tribulation. Which bastard is going through a tribulation in the sect? The experts in Zhushenzong were instantly furious. One must know that although the heavenly tribulation only targeted one person, if there were cultivators nearby, then the heavenly tribulation would also include them. Moreover, the more cultivators there were, the higher their cultivation, the more terrifying the heavenly tribulation would be. Chapter 52. If someone was really transcending the tribulation near the outer Disciples' Mountain, all the outer disciples of Zhushenzong would be struck to death by a round of tribulation lightning. A huge wave of angry gazes emerged from the depths of Zhushenzong and swept toward the periphery of Zhushenzong, where the tribulation cloud shrouded. Their purpose was obviously to find out who was transcending the tribulation here. However, no matter how these powerful divine senses swept, they could not find the person who was about to transcend the tribulation. Then, the tribulation clouds that shrouded the sky and made the disciples of Zhushenzong panic suddenly dissipated. If it were not for the fact that many disciples were still in fear and announced that this had happened, everything would be normal and there would be nothing special. That was close. In the Hichu Luoshu world, Murongyu breathed a sigh of relief. Just now, when he left the Hichu Luoshu world, he felt the power of the heavenly tribulation outside. However, he had never experienced a heavenly tribulation, so he did not react for a while. If Hichu had not directly taken it into the Hichu Luoshu world, the heavenly tribulation would have already descended. You must not transcend the tribulation in Zhushenzong. Otherwise, once the tribulation clouds descend, you will definitely be struck to ashes, Hichu said in a low voice. If Murongyu really transcended the tribulation in Zhushenzong, the heavenly tribulation would mistakenly think that all the cultivators in Zhushenzong were transcending the tribulation. At that time, that kind of heavenly tribulation would be unbearable even for ordinary immortals. However, you just broke through to the foundation establishment stage and caused a heavenly tribulation. Is your chaotic celestial body so heaven-defying? Hichu was a little puzzled. Generally speaking, there would be a 4 and 9 heavenly tribulation, a 6 and 9 heavenly tribulation, or a 9 and 9 soul-destroying heavenly tribulation between cultivators. These were the 3 heavenly tribulations in the immortal realm. Generally, even if a cultivator cultivated to the transformation stage, the 4 and 9 heavenly tribulation would only descend in the late stage of the tribulation stage. Passing the heavenly tribulation, if one succeeded, one would ascend to the heavens in a single step. If one failed, one's soul would scatter, and one's true spirit would vanish, consigned to eternal damnation. That was to say, in the cultivation world, only those in the late stage of the crossing calamity realm would face the 49 heavenly tribulations. Other realms would not face any heavenly tribulations. Even war god Zhao Yun was the same. On the other hand, Murongyu faced a heavenly tribulation when he was in the foundation establishment stage. Could it be that his physique was even more heaven-defying than Zhao Yun? Or was it that even the heavens couldn't tolerate him? None of this was known, but Murongyu was frowning deeply at this moment. He wasn't worried about whether or not he could survive the heavenly tribulation. Instead, he was thinking about how to survive the heavenly tribulation. After all, as soon as he left the Hichu Luoshu world, the heavenly tribulation would sense it. Hichu, do you have a way to leave Zushinzong? Muronyu asked after pondering for a long time. Although I haven't recovered 1/10,000th of my strength, leaving Zushinzong shouldn't be a problem. Moreover, you can control Hichu Luoshu to leave Zushinzong. Hichu said in a deep voice. Muronyu nodded and sat down cross-legged. He began to try to control the Hichu Luoshu world. Whoosh! Not long after, an invisible dust cloud left Murongyu's room and slowly flew out of Zushinzong. Muronyu carefully controlled Hichu to avoid the powerful spiritual wills in Zushinzong. It took him an entire day to leave Zushinzong. After leaving Zushinzong, Muronyu sped up. Not long after, he arrived at a deserted mountain range 10,000 miles away from Zushinzong. It's much faster than Gong Liang Hao's sword kinesis flight, Muronyu said to himself with a smile. Hearing Murongyu's words, Hichu sneered disdainfully. Hichu Luoshu is the #1 book in the world. How can it only be this fast? Muronyu only smiled and didn't argue with Hichu. His figure flashed, and he left Hichu Luoshu and appeared above the mountain range. Rumble. The instant Muronyu left the world of Hitu and Luoshu, a large gloomy tribulation cloud quickly condensed in the sky above the mountain range. It carried a terrifying pressure that intimidated the surrounding area. Feeling the power of the tribulation, all the animals and even demonic beasts within a few thousand miles were frightened. They quickly fled far away. Looking at the tribulation cloud above the void, the aura became more and more terrifying. Murongyu's heart moved. In the next moment, a handful of Tribulation Transcendence pills appeared in his hand. The Tribulation Transcendence pill was a pill that Tribulation Transcendence Realm cultivators ate when going through the 4 in 9 heavenly tribulation. It could increase the success rate of the tribulation. But Muronyu used it to deal with the tribulation. It seemed to be a waste of God's gift. After all, this kind of Tribulation Transcendence pill was basically extinct in the cultivation world. How could ordinary cultivators have a Tribulation Transcendence pill? Do you want to eat it? Muronyu looked at the Tribulation Transcendence pill in his hand and hesitated. Tribulation Transcendence is the best power to temper the body. In the past, your teacher used the power of tribulation to temper his body. Hichu didn't stop Muronyu from eating the Tribulation Transcendence pill. He just said lightly, "Temper the body." Murongyu's heart moved. He immediately threw the Tribulation Transcendence pill into the Hichu Luoshu. Then he laughed and said, "Since my teacher can use tribulation to temper his body, I can naturally do it too. Tribulation Transcendence, come, let me see your power." Boom! As if sensing Murongyu's provocation, before he finished speaking, a Tribulation Transcendence thunder as thick as a bucket struck down directly. After an earth-shattering sound, Murongyu was directly smashed into the ground. Under the power of the Tribulation Transcendence thunder, Murongyu's clothes were instantly turned to ashes. His hair stood up, and his body was like a piece of black charcoal. Crackle! Bursts of electric current flowed continuously on Murongyu's body. From afar, it looked like a huge bolt of lightning. Murongyu was struck until he grimaced in pain. He felt that his body was almost smashed. The flowing electric current even made his body numb. Activate your power and devour the power of lightning. Hichu's cold voice sounded in Murongyu's ears. Murongyu's heart trembled. He immediately activated his power and devoured the power of lightning in his body. He directly refined it or used it to temper his body. Chi-chi, the electric current flowing on Murongyu's body gradually disappeared. At this moment, Murongyu also felt that his power had increased again. The strength of his body was also strengthened. Boom! At this moment, the second Tribulation Transcendence thunder struck down. This time, it was not just one Tribulation Transcendence thunder, but 3 Tribulation Transcendence thunder. Murongyu's heart trembled. He shouted and took out the phoenix spear that he had been nourishing all this time. It had already reached the level of a middle-grade magic weapon. He directly soared into the sky and rushed towards the tribulation transcendence thunder that was descending from the void. Boom! After an earth-shattering sound, Murong Yu directly shattered one of the tribulation transcendence thunder with his spear. It turned into millions of lightning bolts that drifted in the void. However, the remaining two tribulation transcendence thunder struck Murong Yu's body fiercely. Murong Yu let out a blood-curdling scream as his flesh was split open by the two bolts of tribulation lightning. Horrifying wounds could be seen all over his body. It was a ghastly sight. Chi-chi, the electric current continuously flowed on the surface of Murong Yu's body. The immense pain constantly attacked Murong Yu's brain, making him feel pain that was worse than death. Murong Yu's eyes were resolute. He clenched his teeth and snorted coldly. He circulated his power with all his strength and operated the chaotic celestial record. In his meridians, the power in his body flowed rapidly. Streaks of electric current were constantly absorbed into his body and integrated into his power. At this moment, the chaotic celestial record, which was the supreme physique of heaven and earth, finally displayed its terrifying power. Traces of black true inner force constantly lingered on every inch of Murong Yu's body. Under the effect of the true inner force, the shocking wounds on Murong Yu's body began to heal at a speed that was visible to the naked eye. Before the third tribulation transcendence thunder struck, Murong Yu's body had completely recovered from the injuries that he had suffered. His strength had increased by another notch, and his physical body had also become much stronger. Feeling the changes in himself, Murong Yu could not help but groan. He raised his head and looked at the terrifying tribulation cloud in the sky. Murong Yu's face revealed a trace of a smile. Heavenly tribulation? It's just SOSO. Murong Yu's heart was full of laughter. At this moment, as if sensing Murong Yu's disdain, the tribulation cloud in the void trembled violently, and several tribulation transcendence thunderstruck again. Good timing. Murong Yu roared and stabbed the phoenix spear into the ground with a flip of his hand. As for Murong Yu himself, he used the flying cloud's 4 steps and soared into the sky. In the sky, 7 or 8 tribulation transcendence thunder, as thick as buckets, carrying the vast power of heaven and earth, had already descended. It seemed that Murong Yu's body was about to be smashed to pieces. At this moment, the black true inner force on Murong Yu's body erupted, covering the sky and earth. Endless true Yuan Qi was like a shield, protecting him within his body. Dragon Elephant Prajna Art. Murong Yu roared and instantly used the 7 moves of the Dragon Elephant Prajna Art. They directly bombarded the Tribulation Transcendence Thunder, causing several Tribulation Transcendence Thunder to tremble and be on the verge of shattering. At this moment, Murong Yu made a shocking move. His body swayed and turned into a streak of light, rushing directly into the Tribulation Transcendence Thunder from the side. Crackle! At that moment, Murong Yu felt as if he'd entered an ocean of lightning. The boundless lightning was like seawater that drowned him. Waves of numbness almost made him unable to move. The terrifying, destructive power of the Tribulation Transcendence Thunder instantly caused his body to be severely injured. In the blink of an eye, Murong Yu's entire body was lacerated, and even the smell of roasted meat wafted out. At this moment, Murong Yu was grimacing in pain. However, he did not even make a sound. He circulated the chaotic celestial record with all his might and began to devour the power. Chi-chi, Murong Yu's body, was like a black hole, rapidly devouring the Tribulation Transcendence Thunder. After the Tribulation Transcendence Thunder was devoured, it was quickly refined by him, tempering his body and increasing his strength. Boom, boom, boom. Tribulation Transcendence Thunder continuously struck, bombarding Murong Yu's body. Although this fellow's physique was different from ordinary people, and his recovery speed was also extremely abnormal. Chapter 53. However, the tribulation thunder was the embodiment of the laws of heaven and earth. How could it be so easy to resist? Wave after wave of tribulation, lightning bombarded Murongyu's body, causing it to be smashed into pieces. However, it quickly recovered, only to be bombarded again until it was on the verge of shattering. This cycle continued. While his physical body continued to suffer heavy injuries, his physical body also became stronger and stronger. Boom! Finally, as the last tribulation thunder fell, Murongyu swallowed the last trace of electricity into his body. The tribulation thunder in the void finally dissipated. Murongyu sat cross-legged on the ground. His whole body was surrounded by black vital qi mixed with electricity. It looked a little scary. After half a day, the power and electricity on the surface of his body completely disappeared. Suddenly, Murongyu stood up. His long black hair fluttered in the wind. His body was like charcoal, but there were no injuries. In his meridians, power flowed quickly like a torrent. Originally, it was only black vital qi. Now, there were traces of electricity. Middle stage foundation establishment. My body has finally reached the strength of a high-grade magic weapon. Feeling the changes in his body, Murongyu smiled. For most cultivators, the heavenly tribulation is terrifying and deadly. But for you, it's a way to temper your body and increase your strength. However, this heavenly tribulation is too weak. It can't even withstand a single blow. You don't have to be too proud. Just when Murongyu was a little proud, Hichu's voice sounded in his ears. Murongyu was slightly stunned. That's right. Although the heavenly tribulation just now seemed to be extremely powerful and terrifying, it was still extremely terrifying. However, it was only a few times stronger than ordinary lightning. Compared to the 49 heavenly tribulations in the late stage of the tribulation stage, it was like a small magician meeting a big magician, or not even a small magician. Murongyu nodded. He had underestimated the heavenly tribulation. Moreover, as his cultivation grew stronger, the heavenly tribulation became more and more terrifying. After running to a small river at the foot of the mountain to wash himself, Murongyu changed into a new set of clothes. He was about to enter Hichu Luoshu and return to Zushinzong. Suddenly, he had an idea. Why don't you try flying on a sword? It was everyone's dream to fly freely in the sky like a bird. Murongyu was the same. Previously, because he had not yet reached the foundation establishment stage, he could not fly on his sword. Right now, he had reached the foundational level and could fly on his sword. With this in mind, Murongyu was about to take out a flying sword from the Hichu world. However, he suddenly stopped taking out the flying sword. The lowest grade of flying sword in Hichu Luoshu is a first-grade spiritual weapon. Even if it's only a first-grade spiritual weapon, it's still rare even in the cultivation world. If I, a mere foundation establishment stage cultivator, can control a spiritual flying sword, I'm afraid it'll arouse the envy of others. Murongyu pondered in his heart. He was not afraid of others being jealous and robbing him. However, he did not want to cause so much trouble. After thinking for a while, Murongyu still did not take out his flying sword. However, he was somewhat unwilling, and the feeling of wanting to fly on his sword was getting stronger and stronger. Suddenly, Murongyu glanced at the phoenix spear that he inserted into the ground. Although the phoenix spear is not a flying sword, it has now reached the middle-grade magic weapon level. Flying on a sword, flying on a sword, flying on a sword. Why must I fly on a sword? Can't I fly on a spear? In a mountain range thousands of miles away from Zushinzong, in a peaceful mountain peak, a swaying figure suddenly rose slowly from the ground. This figure seemed to be drunk, flying unsteadily in the void, as if it would fall at any time. It was very funny. As he drew closer, he saw that it was a young man, a building foundation stage cultivator. If there were other cultivators here, they would be surprised to see this figure in the void. From his swaying appearance, it must be this person's first time flying. Everyone has their first time. This was not surprising. What was surprising was that ordinary people usually flew on flying swords. However, This person was stepping on a black spear, flying on a spear. This person was Murong-yu. Murong-yu was worried that a mere foundation establishment stage disciple like himself would cause a lot of unnecessary trouble if he had a spirit weapon, so he changed his flying sword to a spear. Needless to say, the spear could actually fly. This caused Murong-yu to be astonished. In the cultivation world, after reaching the out-of-body stage, one could fly physically. However, in the few stages before the out-of-body stage, one could only fly with the help of magic weapons like flying swords. Generally speaking, in the cultivation world, one flew on a sword. However, this was Murong-yu's first time flying on a spear. However, Murong-yu did not feel that there was anything special about this. Flying on a sword and a spear was the same. As long as one could fly, it was fine. After being unskilled at the beginning, it took Murong-yu half a day to finally master the trick of flying. Although the speed was not very fast, it was already very stable. Back to the sect, Murong-yu's heart moved, and he immediately drove the spear, turning into a stream of light and flying in the direction of Zushinzong. Zushinzong was still as quiet as usual. Many disciples were cultivating, and some were going out to gain experience. Among them, there was no lack of people flying around the sect. That person is so strange. Near the gate of Zushinzong, a few disciples were walking out of Zushinzong together, going out to gain experience. A disciple suddenly inadvertently glanced at the void in front of him, and the next moment, he exclaimed with a look of surprise, "What's so strange about it?" A person snorted coldly. This guy couldn't help but make a fuss when he saw something, which was really annoying. That person can fly. What's so strange about it? As long as one is in the foundation establishment stage, they can fly. No, look, he's not flying on a sword. Not flying on a sword? Could it be an out-of-body stage senior? The rest of the people were shocked and hurriedly looked up. If it was really an out-of-body stage senior, once they got acquainted with such a senior, then, however, when they looked up, they understood why the previous person was so surprised. Because when they saw the person in the void, they were also shocked. Damn, is he flying on a spear? A disciple rubbed his eyes and slapped the other disciple next to him, sending him flying, and then asked in shock, "How domineering. He's actually flying on a spear?" Everyone was shocked, and they could only stare blankly at the person in the void. Murong-yu. Who's this guy? He's really too flashy. After the shock, everyone was speechless. Usually, people fly on a sword or a spear. He's just a guy who wants to attract public attention. A disciple sneered disdainfully. Stepping on the long spear, Murong-yu slowly flew into the Zushinzong. Along the way, he was a little depressed. This was because every time he met a disciple of the Zushinzong, he found that they looked at him as if he was a monkey, full of surprise. Isn't it just flying on a spear? Are they really that surprised? Murong-yu was completely depressed. Murong-yu, on the other hand, didn't realize how unconventional his actions were. Feng-jun was very happy today because he had finally broken through to the foundation establishment stage. After breaking through, he took out the mid-grade flying sword that his grandfather had given him and directly practiced flying on a sword in the Zushinzong. At Feng-jun's side, there was a large group of disciples surrounding him like stars around the moon. One by one, they spoke good words and flattered him. "Junior brother Feng, your posture is too handsome. If other female disciples saw it, they would definitely admire you. Junior brother Feng, it's only been a few hours, and your flying sword is already so skillful. If it was an ordinary person, I'm afraid it would take 3 or 4 days to be proficient in flying on a sword." The people around him constantly flattered Feng-jun. The strange thing was that these people were not only in the foundation establishment stage, but also in the revolving reflection stage. There was even a cultivator in the fusion stage. Everyone present was much stronger than Feng-jun. However, why were they all flattering this cultivator who had just stepped into the foundation establishment stage? This was because of Feng-jun's identity. Feng-jun's grandfather was a powerful elder in the Zushinzong, and his influence was very powerful. The purpose of these people was nothing more than to curry favor with Feng-jun listening to these flattering words. Feng Jun was very happy. However, all of a sudden, the endless stream of flattery disappeared. The people around him seemed to be mute at the same time. After waiting for a long time, Feng Jun didn't hear anyone speak. So he looked at the people around him angrily. With this look, his face suddenly became gloomy, because he found that these people's eyes were focused on a position in front of him, and each and every one of them showed a shocked and surprised expression. Feng Jun looked over and saw a cultivator flying over on a spear. The cultivator was slowly flying towards him, and it was obvious that this guy had stolen his limelight. Flying on a spear? When he saw Murong Yu, Feng Jun couldn't help but be stunned for a moment, and then coldly snorted. "Kid, your spear is good. I want it, give it to me." When he saw Murong Yu flying on a spear, Feng Jun was startled at first, and then felt that flying like this was really too cool. As a result, he dashed out to meet Murong Yu, intending to rob him. Robbery! Murong Yu, who was flying, was startled by this angry shout, and his first thought was that he was being robbed. Then, he was furious, and his face became gloomy. He looked at Feng Jun coldly and found that the other party was only a disciple in the early stage of the foundation establishment stage. So he sneered, "Who do you think you are? You think you can give it to me just because you said so?" Feng Jun was stunned, and then a burst of anger. Who was he? He asked an ordinary disciple for a spear, and not only did the other party refuse his request, he even scolded him. Feng Jun was immediately furious. He made a sword gesture, and with a chi sound, a flying sword broke the void and quickly slashed towards Murong Yu. Chapter 54. Without saying a word, he would directly kill. Murong Yu's eyes flashed with a cold, murderous intent. What he hated the most in his life were people who would kill without saying a word. Whenever he met such people, he would have the urge to kill them. And Feng Jun happened to be such a person. The sword light was swift and fierce, as if tearing the void, and quickly strangling Murong Yu's face. If it was an ordinary cultivator in the foundation establishment stage, under such a close sneak attack, he would have been directly crushed by Feng Jun. However, Murong Yu was in the middle stage of the foundation establishment stage, which was one stage lower than Feng Jun. In the cultivation world, one stage higher meant a huge gap in strength. In front of a cultivator in the middle stage of the foundation establishment stage, a cultivator in the early stage of the foundation establishment stage was simply vulnerable. Murong Yu's face was gloomy. Looking at the flying sword that was shooting towards him, he did not dodge or dodge. Seeing that the flying sword was about to mince his head, he moved. His right hand condensed traces of black, true inner force. And if someone looked carefully, they would see that there were faint electric sparks flowing in the black, true inner force. "Break for me!" Murong Yu roared and directly punched out, fiercely bombarding the oncoming flying sword. Boom! After a loud explosion, Feng Jun's flying sword was immediately sent flying by Murong Yu's punch. On the other hand, Murong Yu was still standing on his spear, unmoving. How is this possible? At this moment, Feng Jun's face was filled with horror. Murong Yu actually used the strength of his physical body to directly send his mid-grade magic weapon flying. How strong was his strength? Just how terrifyingly strong was his physical body? One must know that that was a mid-grade magic weapon, not an ordinary weapon cast from ordinary iron. "Go!" Feng Jun shouted, made a sword sign, and commanded the flying sword to attack again. Murong Yu's eyes flashed. Under the attack, just now, his body only shook slightly because he was shocked by the huge force. As for the rest, he didn't feel any discomfort. The body of a high-grade magic artifact. Murong Yu laughed coldly in his heart. By now, he knew just how strong his physical body was. Seeing the flying sword tearing at him again, he grinned. With a thought, the power in his body burst out crazily, and then he punched out again. Boom! Crack! Murong Yu didn't even use his heavenly dragon's power. Instead, he sent the flying sword flying with a single punch. At this time, Feng Jun was even more shocked to see that the mid-grade magic tool-grade flying sword that his grandfather had gifted him had actually broken into two with a kacha sound. Pooh! His mind was connected to the flying sword. After the flying sword broke, Feng Jun's mind was immediately heavily injured. He spat out a mouthful of blood and fell from the flying sword. At this moment, the surrounding disciples finally reacted. With a cry of alarm, several sword lights flashed by, and someone had already caught Feng Jun. As for the others, they firmly surrounded Feng Jun and glared at Murong Yu with murderous intent. Kill him, kill him! Feng Jun fell to the ground, his face pale. Obviously, he had been seriously injured. However, he looked at Murong Yu with a face full of resentment, gritting his teeth, as if he wanted to eat Murong Yu alive. Boy, you are really courting death. Do you know the identity of young Master Feng Jun? He is the grandson of Elder Feng. You actually broke his magic artifact. You are really courting death. Hurry up and kill yourself, or you will be killed by 1,000 cuts. A disciple in the late stage of Foundation establishment walked out and looked at Murong Yu coldly. In addition, several disciples also walked out and looked at Murong Yu with murderous intent. They were all surrounding Feng Jun and constantly flattering him. What was the reason? Because they wanted to curry favor with him. Obviously, this was a good opportunity. As long as they killed Murong Yu and avenged Feng Jun, their relationship with Feng Jun would be closer, and they would have a better life in Zushinzong in the future. A bunch of idiots. Murong Yu glanced at everyone coldly, and his heart was full of disdain. These people were no threat to him at all. However, Murong Yu's gaze paused on one of them for a moment. This person's cultivation was very strong. Although it was far inferior to Gong Lianghao and the others, Murong Yu could not see through his cultivation. Boy, be careful. This person is a cultivator in the fusion stage. He has at least the strength of 30 heavenly lions. You are definitely not his match. At this time, Hichu's voice sounded in Murong Yu's ears. Fusion stage? The strength of 30 heavenly lions? Hearing this, Murong Yu's face showed a trace of smile. Although his dragon power was still not as strong as 30 heavenly lions, it was not far away. Although this person's cultivation was stronger than his, he could not kill him. Courting death. Seeing Murong Yu's disdainful expression, these Foundation establishment cultivators suddenly became furious. One of them even let out a loud roar and directly drove his flying sword to tear through the air. At the same time, the flying swords of the other Foundation establishment cultivators also tore through. For a time, the void was filled with the whistling of flying swords, as well as all kinds of colorful sword lights, tearing the sky and earth apart, strangling Murong Yu. Murong Yu's face was cold, and he sneered. He condensed black true inner force in his hands and directly blasted it out. Boom, boom, boom. After a few consecutive loud sounds, the flying swords that strangled Murong Yu were directly smashed into pieces of scrap iron, breaking and flying out in the void. Puff, puff, puff. Every time a flying sword was broken, a disciple spat out blood and fell to the ground with a dispirited face, looking at Murong Yu in the void with a look of disbelief. Who is this person? How can his physical body be so terrifying? There were originally many disciples coming and going in the vicinity, and the battle between Murong Yu and the rest had attracted many people to come and watch. At this moment, when they saw Murong Yu's great power breaking the flying swords of these disciples with his fists, they were all shocked. Although the flying swords of these disciples were not of high quality and were only low-grade magic weapons, they were still magic weapons. However, it was still a magic tool. Murong Yu's physical body was simply too powerful. Hey, isn't that person the new outer sect disciple? The one who confronted Wei Han half a month ago. But now he has broken through to the Foundation establishment stage? In the crowd, there were obviously people who recognized Murong Yu's identity. Murong Yu? What's his identity? Immediately, someone asked curiously. Then, those who knew Murong Yu told them everything they knew. TSK, this guy is too strong. However, his physical body is really strong. Even his flying is different. Spearkinesis flight, For a moment, everyone was discussing Muronyu. And because of today, Murongyu's name officially appeared in front of the disciples of Zushinzan. With a flurry of punches, the flying swords of the Foundation establishment stage cultivators were all broken by Murongyu. This was only because Murongyu did not want to take their lives. Otherwise, these people would not have been able to withstand a single blow and would have been killed by Murongyu. However, even so, the Foundation establishment stage cultivator who attacked just now was mentally injured. Each of them looked at Murongyu with a look of horror and incomparable hatred. Interesting, the middle stage of the Foundation establishment stage actually has such a strong physical body. I want to see what kind of strength you have. At this time, the only revolving reflection stage cultivator walked out and looked coldly at Murongyu. His voice was incomparably cold. Revolving reflection stage? Murongyu sneered, his face full of disdain. If that fusion stage cultivator had attacked, Murongyu might have had some misgivings. But a revolving reflection stage cultivator? Murongyu didn't care about it at all. Perhaps seeing Murongyu's disdainful eyes, the revolving reflection stage cultivator's face became gloomy. The depths of his eyes flashed with a trace of coldness. Zhu, kill him. I will take care of the sect. You don't have to worry. Feng Jun stared hatefully at Murongyu, gnashing his teeth as he spoke. Junior brother Feng, rest assured, he will definitely kill him to avenge you. Zhu laughed sinisterly, forming a sword art and attacking towards Murongyu. Murongyu's eyes narrowed slightly, his eyebrows flashing with a cold, killing intent. He suddenly grinned, his smile somewhat sinister. If someone familiar with Murongyu saw him narrow his eyes, they would know that he had the intention to kill. It was also a low-grade magic tool, but in the hands of a revolving reflection stage cultivator, there was a huge gap between it and a Foundation establishment stage cultivator. Zhu's sword chopped down. The void seemed to be torn apart. It was extremely terrifying. It wanted to grind Murongyu into powder. Murongyu released his true essence, black true essence lingering around his body. It seemed a bit strange. Murongyu, on the other hand, was still coldly looking at the incoming flying sword. He didn't make a move. This is a revolving reflection stage cultivator who knows how many times stronger than a Foundation establishment stage cultivator. Murongyu is actually indifferent? Is his fleshly body really that strong? Seeing this scene, someone in the crowd exclaimed, "Humph! This Murongyu is skillfully courting death." Although she has just broken through to the revolving reflection stage. Half a month ago, he killed a late Foundation establishment stage monster beast outside. His strength is very strong. How can those Foundation establishment stage cultivators compare? Someone said with a sneer. Obviously, they were not optimistic about Murongyu's arrogance. Murongyu is really too arrogant. Someone said with a frown. Not necessarily, since Murongyu dares to do this. He naturally has his own confidence. Let's just wait and see. Someone said indifferently. At this moment, Zhu's flying sword had already rushed to the top of Murongyu's head and chopped down. Murongyu gave a low shout, his fist encircled with black true essence, and directly punched out. Boom! After a loud sound, the flying sword was directly sent flying by Murongyu. Only, Murongyu was obviously also sent flying by the huge force. However, it was different from the flying sword that had bombarded the Foundation establishment stage cultivator. Although it was also a low-grade magic tool, Murongyu was not able to break it. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.